Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Life Discussions with Dr. Jefferson. I am your host, Dr. Lakianda Jefferson, and today we're going to have some very, very difficult conversations. And like I put in the description box already, if you are a person who is easily triggered and things typically get under your skin quite easily and you don't have a therapist, you probably don't want to tune in to this segment. Otherwise, we're going to have a very comprehensive conversation today, and I'm going to give you guys some education, some background about a couple of things, and hopefully you guys will leave with a renewed sense of being, of responsibility, accountability maybe, and then some new insights on what's going on in the world around you and how it affects the behaviors of people that are connected to you and people who are not necessarily directly connected to you, right? But also how it affects you personally. Um, so I wanted to start off with something that's a little bit lighthearted because the conversation is going to be so difficult to kind of gauge. And, it is what it is. But I thought it was really cool when this person sent me this, and I was supposed to do the show last night, but I was like, you know what? This will be great to kind of bring in the conversation on Monday night show. So I'm going to share it. Okay. So this guy, right? I'll read the story for you guys as well. Hold on just a sec. Let me go to the banner because my producer is like, he's over there, but not really. So, hold on, let me read you guys this. So, this guy is a techie guy, and apparently, he thought it'd be a cool idea to bring back his ex wife to be, ex fiance. So, let's read a little bit about this. And I think it is very interesting. Let me know how you guys are feeling about it, though, because, yeah. After Joshua Barbo's fiance passed away, he spoke for her for months. Spoke to her for months, sorry. Or rather, he spoke to a chat box programmed to sound exactly like her. So, for any of you who are like extreme techies or have like the smart home and things like that, this would be like having Alexa in your home and having Alexa be very, very smart and then mimic your dead ex fiance, your dead fiance. Do you call it an ex if they died? Whatever. However, this was his coping mechanism. Okay. In a story for the San Francisco Chronicle, Barbaro detailed how the project December, a software that uses artificial intelligence technology to create hyper realistic chat boxes. That's what chatbots are. Chatbots are like chat boxes with information put inside of them, i.e., your Alexa device. Okay. Um, recreated the experience of speaking with his late fiance. All he had to do was plug in old messages and give some background information, give a little context, right? And suddenly a model could emulate his partner with stunning accuracy. Put a one in the chat if you guys think that this is you think it's creepy. Cause like you just bury a person that you intended to marry and you know that they're dead, and then all of a sudden imagine waking up in the morning hearing their voice. Good morning, honey. How are you? Do you want your usual oatmeal for the morning? Like, absolutely not. Like, get out of here. I'd probably feel weird. Okay. So it says it may sound like a miracle or Black Mirror. I agree with the Black Mirror episode. I'm not sure how many of you have seen those little short snippets or whatever, but they're really interesting too. But the AI creators warned that the same technology could be used to fuel mass misinformation campaigns. And I agree with that because I feel like the more stuff you feed an artificial intelligence, the more likely that stuff is to get out there in huge capacity because they know all of the algorithms. You know, if you guys have watched Space Jam, algae rhythm, getting all the information, collecting the information about people, the way we move, the way our behaviors are, the way we respond, interactions, looking at text messages and emails. Essentially, these computers are taking over and emulating the way that we respond and we interact with one another anyway. And half of the time, it's more, efficient than what we actually do, you know? So I agree, Miss Sandy. I thought it was, yeah, yeah. Imagine just waking up to that. Oh, you watched it too? I was just like, what is this? Were you equally disappointed after like the first? Because I don't know. I watched the first episode and I was like, okay, maybe that's a fluke. It's just to kind of get me, pulled in. This is gonna be interesting. Watch the second one, same thing. I'm like, what are we doing? You're wasting my time. And this isn't even related content. Like I thought it was just super weird. Okay. So tell me how many of you folks think this was just overboard. Okay. Over over the top. Which episode is that? You would have to tell me because I don't have the mental capacity or emotional strength to watch multiple episodes because it's that difficult for me. It is that difficult for me. Like literally. You have. You have seen it. It's the one where we remember we watched the one where the two, I think it's like the two teenage boys are in the house and it's like a haunted house scene. And when it went out, we were both looking at each other like, what is this? I can't. I don't have enough emotional energy to be able to re-explore that without feeling confused. Okay. We let me know what it is because I need to know very specific. I don't think I have because you know how you just get kind of emotionally charged when you're watching something. You feel like it has the propensity to be great, right? And then it lets you down because it cuts you short. That's what Black Mirrors is like. So, how do you guys feel about this story? This dude did this for months. He did this for months, y'all. He must have really loved her though. That's another level of love, you guys. That's a whole different level of love. I would hope that when I die, my husband wants to kind of continue to talk to me. And that's the point. You don't have to mourn because you never lost a woman. Like she's there in your ear asking you, hey babe, do you need some help fixing your coffee today? Remember, not enough, not too much sugar. In grief therapy, like in grief therapy and some modes of our therapeutic situations where grief is very complicated, we actually use dolls to emulate dead babies. So yeah, probably. Probably. But not really because he could just re-upload it because it's AI. So just like Alexa's on this one device, Alexa's on all devices. So it could be on your phone too. Yeah, that means you're a cheater. Because then she could see who you're talking to and ask you questions. Oh God, imagine you guys, imagine trying to move on and have a relationship and your fucking AI and your phone is like, ah, John, I thought that we were together. Like, what are you doing with her? I'm very angry with you. You won't be able to use your phone today. They wouldn't. They would totally dismiss you completely. Um, so for the people, before we kind of get started on the topic at hand today, give me just a sec, you guys. I'm gonna mute my mic so that I can pull the link from YouTube so people can catch it on the YouTube, and come over here and join the chat from Facebook. So give me just a second. All right. So, for those of you who are viewing me on Facebook, I've posted the link to the YouTube so that you guys can come over here and join me on this side of things so you guys can be a comprehensive part of the chat for the conversation today. Yes, we are going to have a pretty in depth conversation about the way that the Black and Brown community interacts um, amongst genders. We're going to have a conversation that dissects some of the conversations and some of the rhetoric, pushed by Kevin Samuels. We're gonna, and I'm not gonna play any videos of Kevin Samuels because of you guys will know after I kind of delve into this conversation. But I'm sure that you guys can probably remember the conversation. So Kevin Samuels is now a part of cancel culture. As a result of a conversation that took place on how much what was it, like a month ago or so. I had a content creator who also views my channel to send me my own content for accountability. Like, well, why would you go against Kevin Samuels and all this stuff? Now I'm going to clear up a couple of things, because here's the thing. Lots of people feel like um I am a person who is beyond reproach because I'm highly and heavily opinionated, and I am a master debater. Okay. So the realities are, let me give you guys a little bit of history. I was the captain of the debate team in high school, captain of the debate team in primary school. So that's typically elementary school. So elementary school and high school is kind of how we do, and that's kind of like my thing, you know. Not to mention that on the parental holding side, like I was a secretary for an attorney who was my parent. So you got to understand, I only operate off pragmatics, right? So when I come to the table for accountability, if you guys had to align accountability and responsibility components, do it in legal terms, right? So, in court, it's only about what you can prove. It's nothing about emotions, right? It's 100% about pragmatics. That's the same way that I operate, because at the end of the day, if I don't have the receipts for it, I don't speak on it. And so if I don't have the experience in my tenure, if I don't have the exposure in my tenure that gives me full insight on the thing, I don't have any conversations about it, because how can I hold anybody accountable for anything if I don't know anything about the thing, right? So that's that part. So it's interesting to me though how people can grab their generalizations, because some of you do it too that follow me on this channel. You guys have mixed emotions about what I do and what I don't support. The only thing that I do stick to, and I have made it very clear about my personal insights as it relates to the content that I reviewed on this channel, is that I do not like Kevin Samuels. I stand by that. So, with that said, energy, okay, let's get into this conversation. So, recently there has been several um people speaking out against Kevin Samuels having a public platform in which he shares information and his personal insights, which are taken as facts, because he has a thing that he does when it comes to the manipulation of statistics and probability and things like that, right? That's his thing. I consider Kevin Samuels and all of his content to be purely for entertainment purposes, simply because he does not have said education to give anybody relationship and expertise. Furthermore, I'm about to get into that. So that's the first part. And then the things that he does render relationship advice about, those things are not pragmatic. None of those things have been proven by the science, the research, or interactional patterns between people to be indications that guarantee success longitudinally for people who are trying to have successful relationships. So it's just what it is, right? These are the facts. However, much of his rhetoric has definitely pushed people, men in general, in the Black community, in a direction to which they're divesting from their women, their culture in general. Okay. And I think that even in situations where these relationships have been properly vetted, men and women have tethered themselves to one another and built appropriately with one another, I think what happens is it starts to cause a rift in the way that men and women see one another in general in the community. Now, does he have traumas, right, that go towards the accountability of him having trauma bonds with other people who follow his content? Should he be allowed to vent? Sure. I think that Kevin Samuels could easily just vent and protect his energy himself, and he could definitely protect himself from lawsuits if he simply had a disclaimer that said, please understand that the information that you're about to review or the content you're about to review is purely for entertainment purposes only. Yes, these women have waived their right to privacy, and I am not a professional or an expert in the subject matter. I'm just weighing my personal opinion. Bam. Kevin Samuels, you are validated in your space. But when you get to the point where you're saying you're calling yourself a professional relationship consultant and you have zero education, you have zero stats, you have zero experience in your tenure to account to the information that you are giving to the public, and that information actually can be more damaging than good, and it becomes misinformation, it becomes something that's borderline illegal. Just going to call a thing a thing. So, in the field of mental health, we have several people who are experts in the field simply because not only our education, but also our tenure, our experiences, our research that we've contributed to, all of these things, right? The stats, but real stats that are actually representative of the sample population that we speak about. These are things that speak to our qualifications to be able to weigh in on subject matter and help people resolve whatever issues they come to the table with. So, we equally have an ethical obligation and legal obligation to do no harm. So, if that said information, if those said advisements, consultations, whatever, lead to harm of said person, right? We are held liable in court. In court, we are. Because the things that we put out cause undue distress or harm to said person instead of alleviating symptom presentation or leaving them as we found them. Okay. So those are my main issues. But so let's get into this. Let's get into this. Okay. Let me look at this first one. So personal accountability standards in the Black community. When you are looking at the content that Kevin Samuels puts out on his channel, to some extent, one would say, okay, he has guys on his show, he has females on his show, and he's doing interviews with both. However, what is in the content of the interviews that are taking place on a public platform where this public platform has grown to be more and more influential? And we are in a space where people have grown more and more not only dependent, but committed to what they find on the internet. Okay. And let's go look at some of the facts. Let's check out some of the facts that are associated with that component, just that component, because that's what we're going to do. I'm going to share several facts. Uh, uh, uh. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Mm-mm. So you can post the comments as I'm going, and then we'll go back through them. And you guys, I'll entertain your comments once we're done with the fact check stuff. Mhm. So does everybody? So Miss Sandy, I know that you are an avid Kevin Samuels supporter. So do I'm gonna give you the honor of posting when Kevin Samuels went viral. What year was that? And any of you guys who are watching are free to do so as well. Okay, let's see. Where are you? Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, but when? How many followers did he have at that point? Let's just go back to when did Kevin Samuels have 100,000 followers? Let's put it at that. Before I pull this up. Did you get it? So we're gonna read this. Okay. YouTube. YouTube is an American online video sharing and social media platform launched by Steve Chad Jod in February of 2005. So how long ago was that? I just want you guys to do the simple math really quickly. This is when Google bought YouTube for $1.65 billion from these geniuses. You know, they came up, one could say, in a year, maybe a year and a half. So YouTube now offers paid content such as movies and exclusive content. Okay, so let's talk about the birth of and the expansion of YouTube, the online video platform that was founded 16 years ago. Let's have this conversation. So, if people are being encouraged to do YouTube videos because people are constantly on YouTube because they can't stay off the internet and social media, what does that say about the propensity for people to find information, whether it's reliable or not, from the internet? So, let's talk about it. YouTube has obviously gotten so big that it has expanded beyond the website into mobile apps, network television, and the ability to link with other services. Company sponsors, YouTubers. So, since around 2015, established media corporations such as Disney, Viacom, CBS, and Warner Media have created and expanded their corporate YouTube channels to advertise to a larger audience. So, YouTube exists primarily to expand the audience capacity of every single person who is a content creator, every single person who is looking for information to be rendered in a classroom setting and given out to their students. but people in general. So that means that YouTube is now the most dependable and reliable source of information and spreading insight um in the world. In the world, literally. Billions of hours of contents and thousands of niche group, YouTube has a substantial social impact. These are not my words. It has been involved in many news headlines, controversies surrounding allegations of excessive self censorship, corporate favoritism, facilitating the spread of conspiracy theories, and endangering child safety and well being. So let's just focus on that component right there. So now I want you guys who are avid Kevin Samuels followers to go and look up the very controversial GoFundMe campaign out there to remove Kevin Samuels from the internet. All right, so December 9th, 2020. So what year did you see that YouTube reported its highest revenue earned? And its revenue is based off of how many people are engaged in the platform YouTube. Same year. Okay. Some people have attributed the success of and the rise of YouTube to COVID-19 and the fact that people didn't have access to the other things that would have given them joy or, made them feel better or cope properly during the stressful times of a pandemic, right? But the reality is, we were a year and a half into a pandemic when they reported revenues of 19.8 billion in 2020, and this was their highest revenue since 16 years, right? So let's keep reading. YouTube also acts as a social network right here by allowing users with a Google account to watch and upload their own videos, comment on videos, rate and respond to comments, like or dislike videos, create playlists, and subscribe to other users and channels, right? Now, this is the huge one. Oh my God. With billions of hours of content and thousands of niche groups, right? YouTube has had a substantial social impact. Okay? Substantial. Obviously. So if a person is on YouTube and using YouTube to spread their insights, and that person, let's go, we got to go back to it now. That person in their rhetoric is spreading a conspiracy theory based on maneuvering the science, maneuvering the stats to look a certain way, right? What could one say? Do they need censorship because they are now the main, seed of controversy? Could we say that? Possibly. So someone did a video. I think it was Mario J on Tough Love on his platform. I'm gonna wind this thing all the way down. So we're gonna start from the beginning and we're gonna wind it all the way down for you guys. So on Mario J's video, he talked about, in order for people to stop folks like Kevin Samuels, people would have to have $2 million stowed away, right? That was, that's what he gave it. $2 million. So who agrees with that sentiment? Who thinks that Kevin Samuels is a person who doesn't need to be removed from the internet? He's not responsible for inciting violence. And I want to make sure that I mention this. The main issue in this particular conversation is that Kevin Samuels has said on quite a few different occasions that he will not acknowledge a problem of domestic violence that is happening to Black women. If Black women are being violently reacted upon, Black women are the cause of said interaction. Go find the video. You guys are Kevin Samuels followers, so you're more than welcome to go find the video and play the video. What I will not do is repost foolery. And no longer will I play anything of Kevin Samuels on this channel. So let's look at the facts around domestic violence and crisis situations that are recent in the news at the hands of Black men and Black, against Black women. So let's look here. One. So this is the most interesting one, right? I don't know, because you guys might not watch news, so might be very similar to Kevin Samuels and say, you know what, these issues aren't important. So let's take a look here. Who remembers this guy who was responsible for killing his girlfriend and her special needs child? Anybody remember that? Nope. Nope. Nobody. I thought it was interesting. His sentencing happened today. Since we're in the 3 life terms, but we're denying the fact that domestic violence is something that is an issue in the Black community. Okay, so let's read this because some of you may not have had access to, may not have been following these stories or whatever. So let's go ahead and get into it. Ronnie O'Neill III represented himself during his trial, where testimony and evidence showed he viciously beat and shot his girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and then used a hatchet to kill their 9-year old autistic daughter, who also had cerebral palsy. O'Neill also attempted to kill his 8-year-old son, stabbing him repeatedly before setting fire to the family home. Judge Michelle Cisco sentenced the 32-year-old. By the way, this is definitely Kevin Samuels' influence group. And what can you say? Welcome to the manosphere. Black people don't incite violence, right? Especially if they're Kevin Samuels. But come on, let's finish reading. Plus 90 years to 3 life terms plus 90 years in Hillsborough County Court Friday, saying she had rarely encountered such a horrible case. So when we think about the magnitude of the crimes that are committed, and we think about the way the justice system relates and interacts with our Black and brown men, and when we say that our Black and brown men have been targeted, and we look at the realities around this happening, because guess what? This isn't the only story, folks. His sentencing just came down the last 24 hours. So, so let's really get into this. Let's call a thing today. So, since Kevin Samuels is going to say this, and this made national news, international news, okay, way before Kevin Samuels ever made that statement. Kevin Samuels' statement was he does not see any Black men causing domestic violence or any type of violence towards Black women. This isn't the only one we're going to talk about. We're going to really get into this today. So, I believe in receipts. So, when you say that, Kevin Samuels, and you talk about 1 in 4 women will get married. How many women want to get married to untethered men? That's the question. How many? You think that a woman really wants this for her outcome? You think that this is what she wants? You think she wants to marry an unstable Black man who has been influenced by MGTOW movement and who has been influenced to believe that he has no particular position when it comes to his family or his community. And as a black man, he doesn't have a voice, so he should be acting out violently towards women. And if men are not the people who speak on this and say, you know what, this is an atrocity, we have to protect our women, because this is happening more and more often with our women and our children. Our legacies are not protected because we as a whole, we as men are not taking accountability for the few men in society that have definitely been put on the forefront, so the rest of us can see what's going on in the black household that contains two parent systems, where the male and the female are trying to co-parent but ineffectively communicating with one another. Okay. Hey AAS, how are you? Okay. So the mother of this young lady calls him a coward, right? This is what he said. He lacked emotion as he addressed his victim's family, saying, "At first, I want to say I'm not sorry for the things I didn't do. And I'm not sorry for the things I did do. But I will say I'm sorry for your loss." This this is what the rhetoric of Kevin Samuels, following the teachings of Kevin Samuels, does to the mindsets of these young black men in the community. Without proper insight, education, elevation, and guidance from a black man who is strong and the symbol of excellence, black men will fall into these deep, dark holes like this one because they don't have anybody holding them accountable. And the only people who are responsible holding them accountable that are in their 50s are too busy trying to have sex with women that are young enough to be their daughters or granddaughters, because they feel like they missed their opportunity to be a parent to the children that they gave lineage to, right? And now they're angry at their younger years having been pissed away and they never were able to accomplish things in life, but then don't realize the magnitude of the impact that they have on society, i.e., going back to all of the information that we just read on the impact of YouTube and social media on human behavior and human influence. This is what you call looking at the facts, not the stats, but the facts, because the facts are people are currently still logging in on YouTube in an abundance. These are recent numbers. These are not inundated and outdated stats about what should happen and what shouldn't happen. This is not this isn't inundated charts about BMI. This is reality. This is the reality that we as black people are closing our eyes to and refuse to take accountability to. Kevin Samuels' message directly was, there is no domestic violence happening against black women. This goes directly against that. Directly. Does it not? I think because, like, I'm trying to make this as easy for common sense today. Like, I'm literally going to go and get the statement is black women don't suffer from domestic violence as a result of their relationships with black men. You need to go and play the clip yourself. If you're a Kevin Samuels follower, I'm sure you've heard it several times over. That was like the third video in which he said it. So, if if that's the position that you sit on and you feel like a man who says black women do not suffer from domestic violence isn't an issue, right? And this is a recent case, days old. This guy was just sentenced. Within the last 3 years, he murdered this young woman and his child and attempted to murder his other child in that same said home. So let's get to it. How many people feel like he should have died instead of been sentenced to consecutive life sentences? How many people have that energy? Oh yeah, I know that everyone suffers from domestic violence, but the point is, he said that they don't. One could argue that, but if you watch his videos, then you would know different. So let's look at some of the comments before I go to the next story we're going to share. Domestic violence perpetrated more often, abuse in secret. A good number of reports come through third parties. Oh yeah, they do. But these are numbers of reports that came through with these people ended up dead. Okay, so I'm only going to the extremes today, but I got another one that's even more recent. That's right here. So hold on, wait for it. Ha ha ha. And this is what's interesting about this, because I do believe I was on the official Urban Therapist channel on yesterday, and I asked a generalized question. I asked him what was his responsibility. Right, Big Kane. What was his responsibility to the community, to their community, to the black community, and to women more specifically in the community? Okay, in general. So not his woman, but women in the community in general, right? The official urban therapist. And he had a guest on his show, I think Mad something, asked the same question. Those questions were met with the energy of, no, no, my responsibility is to the women in my household because men don't have a voice. Okay. So then this leads me to ask the question, have men truly lost their voices slash accountability to their responsibility for the women and children in their communities? So AAS says, I am 100% against the death penalty in all circumstances. What about murder? Intentional murder. How do you feel about this child who was, how old was the special needs kid? 7 or 9. So, how do you feel about this 9-year-old girl who was hatcheted to death by her father? How do you how do you feel about that? You said men don't have a voice. They do now, thanks to Kevin. Okay, so we're going to talk about that too, pretty much in detail, because we're going to even talk about in detail feminism. We're going to have a comprehensive conversation. So, the official urban therapist, my question still stands for you. You feel like you only are responsible to the females that are in your household, or do you feel responsible to and accountable to the females in your community in general? So let's talk about, when I asked myself this question, I wanted to know, when violent acts happen against, exactly, Big Kane, violent acts happen against black women in the community. How do black men respond? Right? How do they feel? Are they pissed off? Are they encouraged to take to the streets and advocate for better laws, more strict laws, and things like that, like the men at the beginning of the feminist movement? Are they the men who value their women so much that it pains them to think that another man could think it's okay for him to come in and abuse physically or otherwise women in his presence? Regardless of what outcome there may be, whatever domestic violence cycle they may be in, whatever their dance looks like interrelationally, whether they know each other or not, do black men take to the streets, get pissed off, and as a result, do something about the insurmountable violence against women that could potentially lead to the death of women or does lead to the death of women. So I'm not sure how many of you also watched that video, the content that I reviewed and put out there about the young man who murdered his white baby's mama. And the young man was black again. And he murdered her. And as a result, this child, was left without two parents, essentially. Right. Okay. So let's just see what black men do in response to, you know, the realities around community violence at the hand of black men. Let's see how black men feel about this.
For the men who attacked a woman after she told one of them she didn't want him to buy her a bottle of wine. Tonight, she's getting a show of support from her community, calling for justice. CBS 2's Corey James reports from Harlem.
Let's specifically look at the people who are coming out and showing support for her.
A large crowd of people stretched across 128th Street in Harlem Saturday night, many of them standing directly in front of this liquor store where a 31-year-old mother was brutally beaten Monday. The demonstration was the end of a rally that began 3 blocks away as women, men, and children stood on the corner speaking out against violence targeting the neighborhood.
If we don't do it, who is? It's our responsibility. It's our duty to protect our women and children in our community.
It could have been. Now that's a black man.
Me, my daughters, my mother, any female. The community as a whole, we all need to stick together.
Earlier this week, CBS 2's Lisa Rosner spoke with the woman assaulted. She says the man wearing a red parka in this surveillance video offered to pay for her wine, but she politely declined. After checking out and walking out the store, the woman says a group of men chased her across the street, then kicking her, one of them even biting her on the forehead.
No matter how much I asked, I'm trying to get to my daughter. Please leave me alone. I said, I'll call the cops. He didn't care about that. He had one thing on his mind, and that was to attack me. That's what he wanted to do.
The victim's family members showed up to the rally in support of their cousin, who they say is still traumatized.
People can't think that they can do what they want to do. No means no.
Senseless, no reason. She didn't even know them. We need them caught. That's our main objective.
And police are hoping this footage will help make that happen so that the woman who was attacked can have justice and her sense of security restored.
I definitely want to see him locked up and put underneath the jail for what he did to me, because I didn't deserve this.
And the woman assaulted says one of the men also took off with her phone after snatching it out of her hand. Police say they have no new leads in this investigation and are asking anyone with information to contact them. In Harlem, Corey James, CBS 2 News.
Sign Now is an e-signature solution with enterprise-grade security.
Okay, so let's have this conversation. Let's talk about it. How do you guys feel having sat with, listened to, reviewed this content, this recent content? I got to say recent because, it happened recently. Right. You know what? Let me tell you something. When I first saw it, I said the same thing. I was like, oh my God, like, are we doing this really? Are we really doing this? Is this our black men? The thing that just melts my heart, that made me feel so much joy in the same sentiment, is to hear a black man stand up in front of a camera on national television and say, it is my responsibility. As a black man, we have to protect our women. To finally hear that, and he didn't dance around it, he didn't avoid it, he didn't skirt around the issue. He knew that this is an issue that affects black and brown people, and his legacy is through these black and brown people that happen to be women. And he, regardless of what his past traumas, past relationship issues were, decided to stand firm on the idea that it's his job, his duty to protect black women. Why? Because let me take you guys back to something. Malcolm X was a bit of an extremist of sorts, okay? But he didn't fall short of accessing and finally conveying the message that black women were the least protected group of people in America. Do you know what he really meant by that during that time? Because that was a time that the new age or third era feminist movement was pushing its heels very hard. Very hard. So now let's talk about the feminist movement. Wait, first we're gonna get to some of these comments. Let's go. Let's run these comments. I see you guys got comments and all that good stuff, but I wasn't looking. Shout out to the chat. You guys are amazing always. Says, so men should protect women in their community, but you're trying to tie Kevin into all this madness somehow, and he has nothing to do with this. Kevin's direct statement for the record, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but he said domestic violence doesn't happen to women. He doesn't see any of it. Says these murders are unspeakable horror. Innocent people have been executed. There's no remedies to guard against this. Eradicating the inequities are irreversible. And do you think that of the ideas of Kevin Samuels are justified, since he had traumas? I think that we have to definitely we have to talk about the fact that cult like outcomes, for inciting violence have to have some level of accountability, right? So many black people were 100% for Trump being tried for inciting violence at the Capitol because they saw more white faces than they saw black faces, and they saw an opportunity to finally get back somehow, in some way against whomever said whatever, right? So, you know, how do you guys feel about that? I agree. I agree. Let's see if I can find an article. Mm-hmm. God, everybody who talks about Kevin Samuels has absolute no regard for him. They're calling him a pseudo love guru. By the way, pseudo means false, fake, not real. Let's see. Nothing's wrong with that. So let me see if I find an article that references that particular video. I'm sure you guys have seen lots of. So Yahoo has an article on there. I'll post the link for you guys. I think that sometimes I think there always has to be a person who speaks heavily for the person that we're talking about. But my main sentiments are these, okay? After seeing the video that I saw where he's saying that domestic violence isn't an issue in the black community, and then I saw him have a conversation days later with a young lady and they labeled the video Kevin Samuels talked to a real hood bitch or something. That was that was that was the label for the video, like, really. And this young lady was a woman who was struggling to take care of her kids, literally confessing to him, having a conversation with him about the fact that she had some internal, insecurities around her being able to care for her child, right? Her children. She had 4 kids, correction. And all he could say is, you're a person who doesn't want to tell me what it is that you do. And I'm trying to have a conversation with you. There are no sentiments for your tears. Oh, doesn't that sound a little bit like the guy that was in court that spoke his last words to the victim's family, where he said that I'm not sorry for anything that I did do or didn't do? Doesn't it sound like that? Gotta love this stuff. You gotta love this stuff. You can't make some of this stuff up. So give me a sec. We're gonna continue to go through the comments here. Here you go. There. There is the link. There is the link. So just remember that when you join, if you join on the StreamYard link, make sure that you have muted the show and make sure that you have your camera on so I can guarantee that you are not some type of weird, person trying to sexualize the show and, do whatever kind of things that people do when they do that kind of stuff. Okay. So let me go back to our next component. I'm pretty sure. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about accountability around this young lady's issue. But first, we're going to talk about feminism. We're going to explore feminism and some of the misconstructs around the feminist movement. Okay. So, for those of you who talk about feminist, I want to ask the question, what wave of feminists do you guys identify with? And do you guys know? Oh, no problem. Do you guys know the history of feminism? Like, what is your comprehensive understanding of feminism and its impact on the world and society as we've moved into where we are now? How many people know where the world was before feminism was a thing? Like, how many people? How about that? That's a good question. Just waiting. Hmm? Yeah, they do have to be a little bit older, but at least they would know something about what was mentioned because I noticed that about young people in America. They do a lot of book reading and things like that, Googling and stuff. So it could bring you guys very close to the time of the feminist movement that was, in the 60s to the 80s, you know. Says a man defined it and women started it. So yeah, no, not quite. So that means that you're good at Google, but not necessarily good at research. Okay. So the first bouts of a feminist movement go all the way back to about 600 or 500. Is it 615 or 620 BC? And then in 500 BC, we see things move for a little bit more. And then when we get into the 1800s, we see some significant shifts as now we've become people who, as a result of some of the footwork done in early 1700s, now want to document and now want to pursue a whole movement. Because to talk about some of the things that were going on in 600 and 500 BC, I talked to you guys about women in Italy and in Paris. Look, I'm here for it. You guys know I'm all about I'm all about education, elevation, and insight. So the one thing that's good about having been a person who has lived in every country, right, and is very well versed and very well rounded and very well studied, because I like to study the facts. I like to be there in the archives. I'm a historian of sorts, and those are things that interest me. So in my vast travels, I have definitely put my hands on a lot of things and were able to connect with a lot of things. So there is a lot of knowledge up here, and that's the purpose of this channel. So because I don't believe that you can take that stuff with you, you got to spread that knowledge and insight and let that be a conduit of growth for people. So you say I consider feminism to be exclusionary. I therefore don't personally adopt or embrace the bare concept. Okay, so feminism was not built on exclusivity. It wasn't about exclusive women movements or anything like that. It really was about the first feminist movements were truly about and no, I don't have to Google domestic violence, because that's what I do for a living. But so I can, I contribute to the research. So I know what the numbers are. But so if you looked at the feminist movement back in the day, ages ago, before Christianity really took off in and kind of got its running shoes and kind of got away with things, um women were seen as property, essentially. Women were seen as the property of the man, very much like the goats and the houses and the land. However, it doesn't mean that women are said property of man. It means that women are a conduit to a male's success. So, as a result of women being seen as property of men, and they were not able to work in the capacity in which most people worked and earn money during times of war, because men waged wars across all the lands. If you guys remember stories, ancient stories about the Vikings, ancient stories about Greece, and leading up to the March on Versailles. Like, if you guys remember anything about the French Revolution, any of these things that you should have learned during world history when you were in elementary school to um middle school, high school, okay? You would have learned that essentially women did not have, I don't see, women did not have the right to move and earn on their own. So they also didn't have the right to, I'm going to add you, official urban therapist. They also didn't have the right to contribute to the household in a meaningful way. However, these women were responsible for contributing to the household in a significant way simply because these women didn't have men to continue to provide for their children and themselves, because the men were away at war and being killed in insurmountable numbers. And other people, other families, other villagers would not take these women in. So they had no livelihood. As a result, they were dying in those same heavy numbers. So if they weren't a casualty of war, and I don't know how many of you know what wars look like back then, but when you had a knight or a king's man, the sire, right? He would go and he would kill the children of said soldier, the wife of said soldier. So he would go to the property after the war was over, and he would take the woman, he'd rape the woman, he would hang the woman, hang the children, and then light them all afire. So this was the world that we are part of now, but way back then. So the initial feminist movement moved to allow women to work in a capacity that allowed them to contribute to what it is that their family system had already started to build. Their husbands had already started to build what we now know as life insurance, okay, or 401ks, retirement plans, whatever you want to call them. So I'm going to pause for a second, let the official urban therapist introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. I am the official urban therapist. I appreciate you all tuning in to Dr. Jefferson Life Discussion Show.
Okay. So I know I asked you guys how many of you subscribe to which wave. So I'm basically going to talk about the different waves now and the timeline of those said waves before I invite the official urban therapist to share his insights about some of the content that we, covered in today's session. So the first wave in Western culture, like moving from BC, happened after we saw everything happening over there in France and in during the French Revolution, and those women in Italy poisoning their men, killing their men because they couldn't get outside of marriages. So a woman couldn't file for divorce, right? A woman couldn't be educated. None of these things. No right to property. She couldn't be a leader of any type of movement. She couldn't be a leader on the council at all, which gave men, some people call them beta men, I won't, but gave men the right to sit out wars and save themselves and put themselves, basically place themselves above the protection of women and children. Okay, sort of like priests. So let's see. So she feels like Black women are left out as to feminism. Actually, not quite. There were several more women who are in this representative sample of women in Italy. and women in Africa and the colonized, areas and jurisdiction of Africa by the colonists in England. So we're getting to it. Okay. Because women were seen just as women over there. When you talk about Black women in America, that's a whole different thing. So they were left out of the situation simply because Black women were slaves at the very top, top of this feminist movement. So they couldn't have anybody fighting for their rights per se because they had no rights per se at all.
Yeah, because they were pretty much slaves and property themselves. And
Exactly.
you're referring to the first wave of feminism, right?
Exactly. So the first wave of feminism that moved to Western society happened in about 1839 to 1840. And during this time, we only focus on education, the right to vote, right to own property, um, gender issues like organizational leadership, all of these things that I talked about, um, sexual liberation, because at the time, women had various whorehouses. However, women could not direct, own, collect money and profits off of said whorehouses, even though they're the ones working them. And for the most part, they were the ones managing them. But the male had to be the person who held the ownership. Um, I don't know how to explain what that looks like for you guys. Breaking that down for American culture and how that kind of aligns. But but let's move forward to the next wave, because the next wave is when you see Black women, or what relates to us as a culture, because the first wave in America and Western culture really focused on white women, because, well, white women and Moors, brown women, because these are women who were already technically um citizens, if you will. However, they didn't have the rights and protections of citizens because those were reserved, by men. Typically, women during this time, they kind of advocated for people to kind of look at women as equal to men as it relates to politics and as it relates to earning potential when they are in the same jobs. Many men, after this second wave, even, because the second wave was never really an issue. The second wave really had a lot of men behind it. The first wave had men leading it. The third wave, however, is where you started having the problems. So we go from the 1830s to the 1840s, which is the first wave. We move on into the second wave, which is around 1960s to heavily seated and going really hard to 1980. If you guys remember, um women doing it on our own and respect, these two prominent songs were huge songs. Aretha Franklin was a huge activist, not only for the feminist movement but also for the civil rights movement in general. And so a lot of people, if you guys didn't live that time, don't know what that's like, but that was like super empowering to all Black people, all Black men, all Black women, for a couple of reasons. This is when we saw the cost of living increase significantly due to integration. So if a Black woman couldn't earn her own money legitimately, right? And bootlegging was against the law. Bootlegging was anything where illegitimate income is being earned. So if a woman is earning income, and I want to take you guys back to this era, it's probably my favorite era in history. Okay. Women were coming up with some of the most interesting creations. Um, some of the things, some of the literature that women were writing, some of the chemical compositions that women were coming up with. Madam C.J. Walker in the Black community was very, very huge. There were so many components that led to the innovation of women, but men would always be behind it. So oftentimes these things would go to account only for males. So women also were heavy in advocacy then. They were heavy trying to get themselves into the workforce because finally the men who were stood behind and led these movements and fought so heavily and voted for these laws to change, because this is what I need men to understand. Now men, black men, sit in a position to where they're like, oh, well, women are against us and women started the feminist movement. Let me explain something to you guys that are diehard on ignorance. In a society where women cannot vote because they literally have no rights, who in the fuck do you think made these laws? Who did it? If women can't vote, well, help me understand. Make it make sense to me. But you guys sit back and you say, oh no, a man defined it. And a man defined, if a woman has no rights, she cannot vote. She can bring issues, she can bring forth movement, she can make noise, all she wants to. But at the end of the day, if she's going to be shut down because we are in a patriarchal society that supports men and men only in leadership positions and in position where change takes place, how is it possible that a woman could lead a movement that leads to the implementation and passing of laws and regulatory authority? I'm listening. I'll wait. I'm still waiting. So that would be like telling me that Asian American people could come over here and vote on our ballots for our president in America with no Asian American citizenship, but they straight out of Asia. So like I said, I'm here for accountability today. So for all of the men who have this idea in their minds that women, for whatever reason, decided that they were going to take and they were going to make these new laws and they led this feminist movement and made these feminist laws, women can't do what they are not allowed to do because they have no voice, because they are no one. They don't count for anything. They are property. So how can they make laws? How can they pass laws? Let's put up Miss Sandy's comment again so I can see it. But in the meantime, I'll talk about the ideals behind the second wave. So the second wave was more like a re-emphasis on these particular issues. You don't require an ID to vote in some states. Most women didn't want to vote. They fought against it, just like women fought against the feminist movement today. So I'm getting to what the feminist movement is today versus what it was back then. They're completely different things. Sexual liberation has been destructive to women physically and emotionally. This continues to be the case. I don't agree. I think that the way that we associate meaning to language, especially you Americans, especially Black Americans who originated their citizenship in America, I think that's the issue. So I always say ignorance is no excuse of breaking the law. The same thing, ignorance is no excuse of stepping outside of moral and ethical bounds.
Hey, are you making reference just talking about feminist movement as a whole, as just women
As a
period,
whole,
or
I'm getting to where I'm looking at. We're looking at pre-modern, we're looking at modern, and we're looking at postmodern framework around feminism. All four ways.
okay,
So
all
that
right,
they have a very clear understanding of kind of where they are now. So they understand what it means and where it comes from and where it's now evolved into and how that
okay,
happened. Okay. So that was the second wave in the 1960s. And it kind of led all the way through, like I said, the 80s. Because it was so the way that we define waves is based off of the ideals. Okay. In the 80s is when we saw a huge shift become a thing. Okay. So after the initial feminist movement, where the highlight of women's rights were definitely a huge issue, women's right to property, women's right to vote, all of these things when it came to sexual liberation. And we're going to talk about what that meant then versus what it means now, because I feel like some of you are still confused. And of course, marital freedoms, right? If we move into the second wave in the 1960s was kind of around gender issues that were still affecting the brown women, because brown women who were considered to be now no longer slaves, removed from slavery, but still very much suppressed because technically there were no laws for them. This is what the Black Caucus argued during that time. So it was easy for them to get these laws changed. That was nothing, and that was never an issue. However, what we noticed is it was increased violence against women as integration became a thing for Black and brown people. So we had more violence against women because the alcohol consumption rate of men was even more higher. Intimate partner violence was definitely a huge issue, especially in Black and brown communities. And there was nothing that could be done to protect a woman who was of brown or Black heritage, because at the end of the day, she didn't have the same rights as her husband. Okay. When we talked about the ending of the marriages as a result of divorce, these men were the one filing for divorce against the women after the women had made so many complaints about violence that against them and things like that. So they fought in the 60s to change the issues around gender, the issues around sexual liberation that still were very much suppressed for Black and brown women, right and access to abortions. So it covers reproductive rights, job opportunities as well, because this is the time where women were really pushing themselves into the workforce, because they realized that the way it happened in Italy was definitely the way it needed to happen in America, because women needed to have a way to continue to make a life for their children when their husbands were away at war. Because during this time, we had already faced 2 wars. Several men are dying. So where does that leave those families? Like I talked about last time, community became even more scarce in support of these women who were widows due to the war. Okay. So during that movement, this is kind of what they focused on. So now we bring ourselves into the 90s, where the third wave really focused on the issues of the LGBTQIA plus community, at the time only LGB community, because it focused on individualism for women, in regard to the way that they identified themselves as when it comes to gender, how they interacted with one another, the gender roles, intersectionality, sex positivity, trans feminism. And this is the wake of the postmodern feminist movement. So people who are from the 90s feminist movement on into this fourth wave feminist movement typically ascribe to the mindsets of women being disconnected or independent of men. Whereas your first, second, and third wave at the very beginning really focused on women having a voice, being able to vote, being able to own, being able to vie for accounts, being able to care for their family systems when they're made widows, being able to sustain life after the death of a husband. Okay. So when we move into the 2000s, which is the fourth wave, we're talking about female empowerment, women being seen as equal in all capacities, not just equal in a political sense, but equal in all capacities, right? Talk about spirituality concerns. We're talking about human rights. We're talking about the planet and the way that women are able to make a decision as to how their feminine products affect the earth. So when we talk about sexual liberation, oftentimes people think that that means women are fighting for freedom to have sex for money, or freedom to have sex without accountability, without religion and spirituality being something that is thrown on them and shaming them for what they're doing. When we talk about body positivity and sex positivity, women are now fighting to be recognized as independent entities who can dress how they want to dress without being sexualized by men just because they have a body, a figure, clothes that flow. And so it became the conceptualization, the general conceptualization of so many men, because during the 90s, when they're being educated, if we look at this current generation of 20 to 30, 38, 40-year olds, they are the kids that were being educated in the 90s at the onset of the shift in perspective. So this is when some men started to feel a little bit inadequate, because women are trying to push for equality now when it comes to pay. They want equal wages for the same jobs worked as men. They're putting in the same amount of work, so why not be paid in the same? So this is when men started to feel threatened in their positions, because they started to be replaced by these women. Because even from the very beginning of the feminist movement, education has always been the centralized focus. So men who were adults and having their children in the 90s, marrying in the 90s, trying to find work in the 90s, naturally started to have a huge issue with women of the same time frame. That's the reason why you see people like Kevin Samuels trying to vie for a relationship with younger women, because he knows that younger women are typically quite easily influenced, but they also lack true education and insight as to what happened back then. So these women can easily be shamed into not being a feminist, because guess what? They can make a feminist look like what it looks like today. So eventually, what happens is they silence the female voice and they remove themselves, remove the woman's voice from the relationship at all. And eventually, you revert back to before modern framework of feminism. So he doesn't have to hear you. You feel unvalidated because by him saying the words, you should be serving me, you think that you should be honoring and, basically subduing your inner consciousness for him. By him saying, if you're going out here getting all this education, it's not going to get you a man, it's not going to keep your relationship. He wants to shame you women into not getting an education, because if you devalue education, you have a higher or greater propensity to need a man in a society where inflation is still continuing to rise. So if I take away the independence that allows women to be interdependent on man, I take away feminism as a movement altogether. That's what that sums up to. So go ahead and share your perspective on the aforementioned conversations about the Black man's responsibility to his community. We had that conversation on your post. Yeah.
We're back to that now. After you gave us a full history lesson on feminism, but which everything you're saying, and I agree with, because I did the research on it too. Did a whole 3-part series about it, so I'm not knocking it. I ain't knocking it at all. Now,
yeah, but I do feel like sometimes modern day, so postmodern feminism is not something that I can stand by or ascribe to, because I think what's initially taken out of context is the word feminism means feminine women independent without man. Instead of celebrating the liberation of women, the rights of women, the movement of women and their inclusion, but also their contribution to their households. Mm-hmm. So, there is a lot around that. And I think that the lack of education, that ignorance, is something that is definitely plaguing our society, because the only people are struggling with it is us.
And so you're talking about Black people?
Yeah.
Yeah, because just like I expressed on my platform, at the end of the day, this feminist movement and the other one, patriarchal system, it was never part of brown people or people of color system. It never was. It was something that we end up integrating into eventually, because we was looking to be free. So actually, to be honest, Frederick Douglass, he the one who went on to spearhead the full feminist move for Black people at that time, because he felt that if he incorporate their movement into us being liberated or being free, that we on the same boat, we on the same coin. So that's what end up happening. What caused us as Black people to get a part of this movement. It was never part of us to begin with. Period. Even back in the day, we had a even back in the day, the men had a different patriarchal. Black men had a different patriarchal system. Their white counterparts, where they actually was treating their women. They actually treating their women with respect. They wasn't treating their women as property and none of that and stuff. But they started incorporating that later through
but
the system.
The thing. So the reason for Frederick Douglass's contribution, if you look at it, is because of the arrest report. So I don't know how much access that you've had to kind of look at what seeded the movement here for Black people, but the problem the Black Caucus had their own laws that were the overarching component to Black or the Black experience, which during integration they depended and leaned on the Black Caucus for direction all the time, simply because you have to understand you're coming into freedom. Even though there were several slaves that were freed prior to that, you're coming into freedom and independence and liberation. Your Black men can vote because he's now a citizen, but your Black women, according to you, no longer have the right to vote, because at the end of the day, even though they're a part of the women, they're not the women that we initially advocated for, because we only initially advocated for the free women. Now, a lot of people misconstrue that with Black. It's not, because there were several Black people who were already colonists when they came here. They didn't have a problem. Those Black women didn't have a problem with voting rights. Those Black women didn't have a problem with rights, period. After the women's suffrage movement and all of that stuff, like, these Black women could vote. They had voting rights because they were never slaves. So the only ones that had the issue were the women that were descendants or, people who had bought into their freedom, but they were still previously slaves. So therefore they previously had no right to anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's legally, they didn't have no type of right. So therefore that's what created the whole movement to get with in the first place, which is very valid. I agree to that.
Right. But I think that if you look at the arrest reports of bootleggers during that time, you'll understand that women were not arrested for the bootlegging. The men were. So it was in the interest of the Black man to fight for the women's rights, because if a woman was not legally able to earn income, all of her side hustles like seamstress work and cooking and all of those, what's the other one? Running the bars and running the shows, like
education too.
All of these little things that Black women were doing to earn income and contribute to the household for the stability of the Black household, because we're talking about inflation that was insurmountable at this point. And Black men were definitely working in positions, but oftentimes, even though they were compensated well per se, they were still not compensated at the same rate as white men. So their households in the same neighborhoods as these white men still needed that sufficient income. So women that were in their household would go out there and get the income, because the young men were not old enough just yet. So whenever that woman would be acquiring that income, she would be getting him in trouble, because the law, it only applies to people who are the legal citizens with the right to vote. You understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, he would be the one that is getting arrested. If he's the one getting arrested, what is the propensity of the Black family losing their home? 100%. You see what I'm saying? So it's about the pragmatics associated with it. Now, it was interesting to me. Women wanted to be seen as equal to man politically, and it was made very clear back then in every movement. Why? Because I lived it, I saw it. So it was made very clear in every single speech that was given, every single movement, every single march, all of that. Martin Luther King would have invited Aretha to sing at all types of civil rights movements and women liberation movements. So these are things that Black people don't know, because it's not televised. It's not on Google. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not easily accessed by these young people, simply because they didn't live that movement. And they're so far disconnected from their ancestors in their direct lines, like grandparents. And that's it. So I do blame us for not giving that said education to our children. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to ask those questions of your grandparents.
Well, I agree. I agree with part of that. And another part of that is that people down in the South, we were um, highly educated about all that through our grandparents. It was taught, and it was also taught through the one of the school systems as well. Everything that you mentioned, I had learned that in school because we had a separate class dealing with that particular issue about civil rights and women's civil rights and everything. They taught that in the school in the South, but for us, um, either East or West of the one country, they really didn't teach them that at all.
But even in the South, if you look at the textbooks, they didn't talk about some of these women's rights movements. They only talked about the highlights that drew the attention of the police, where they had to be interrupted by police presence and all of that stuff, and other extremist organizations coming and interrupting the meetings. Not those regular meetings that were taking place on a regular weekly basis, because there were feminist rights movements in every single state, and in every single city, everywhere. This was a thing. This was an entire movement. There was not a single Black person that did not stand behind it, period. Because feminist rights mean Black people's rights, Black families, consistency, and our legacy continuing on, because we had to have houses where the household financial structure is not struggling, and we're able to send the kids to these schools that we want to continue to send them to, integrated schools, because that was the mark, that was the ideal of a Black person at that point. Black people are so far removed from your culture, from the history of people who have advocated for the rights of you, the person who is the carrying on the lineage. And these young people now move so far away from it and want to be separated from all white people and all of that stuff. You have no idea what people went through just for you guys to have an opportunity to have a voice. So what's interesting to me is that Black people, modern day postmodern women in the Black community, make the argument that Black men don't have a voice, Black women don't have a voice, but you're not the voice of Black people because you have no knowledge that can allow you to be that voice, because you are ill educated. And that's just what it is. And you don't have an interest to be educated. The interesting thing to me, you want to recreate language, move away from language, the same language that your people were responsible for teaching. It's all of these things that people do, modern day Black people do. It's just beyond me. It really is. It really is. I don't understand it, because I'm sitting there and I'm looking, I'm like, you claim you want some of the reparations from your ancestors, but you're not even a direct reflection of what it is that your ancestors stood for. Not even your direct lines. So how can you lay claims to anything theirs if you don't hold the same ideals as they've progressed and should have evolved in this time? So when I say that, to hear people, make negative connotations and negative association, and to make, create these mindsets around what feminism is, right? What it is to be a Black person in society, what it is to be a person that is responsible to community, what it is to be responsible to your children, to your legacy, what it is to be responsible to the legacy of Black people. These types of things really have me just blown. They blow my mind. When you say people like Kevin Samuels are a valid depiction of what it is that Black people in the Black community need, I'm just really confused. I'm really confused. This man literally made a public statement on his show 3 times. Not once, not twice. We're talking about 3 separate shows where he addressed that there is no domestic violence happening against Black women in the Black community, not at the hands of Black men. They're responsible for it. But when we see these different incidents, like the one that I showed earlier today, of this man a Black man attacking a Black woman because she turned him down, what does that say about the mindset of our Black men? Because it's not about the Black man who attacked her. It's about the Black men who are onlookers saying, I owe nothing to the Black women in my community. Like you heard that one Black man say that was asked by the news, Why is he here? What is his agenda? He didn't even have to be provoked to say that it is his responsibility to protect the Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me to hear all of these people who are buying into the Kevin Samuels rhetoric and really thinking that Black men should really divest from their responsibility in the Black community. So to divest from your responsibility in the Black community is to divest from your legacy, literally. You're asking for the eradication of your culture.
Yeah. Now, before I answer that question you challenge me on, let me get an understanding of your definition about the Black community. What does that mean to you?
Community?
Yeah, the Black
people
community.
who identify with the same race as you identify, if you identify as a Black or brown person. And to be honest with you, when I ask that question of white people too. And it's interesting, white people never second guess. White men never second guess. When you ask them what is their responsibility to the Black community, I don't know if you took notice of the people who were there in support of this young Black woman who was beaten by a Black man. But half of that crowd was Black and white men together. White women as well. Hispanic men standing together. Hispanic women standing together. Why? Because they see this as a human issue that affects a culture of people who they still identify with. Because when you say you are Black American, you're still saying you are American. So it's easy for white men to see that they have a responsibility to Black women in our culture. But for some reason, Black men always want to move away from accountability and responsibility because they're looking for the slightest thing to make them move away from it. You don't see white men hear Black women all the time talking about that white man did this, white man did that, white man ain't did this, and white man ain't did that. They hear that shit all the time, but they do not move away from accountability when it comes to protecting a Black woman. Why? Because Black women are women, regardless. Black children are children, regardless. Black men have lost the sight of the fact that these are vulnerable populations of people because they have a problem with their own security of their manhood. This is the reality. Because you see a woman says that she wants to be politically your equal, you see that as a challenge. So now you're in direct competition with her instead of seeking to protect her. Why is it that white men are not having this same affliction or this same struggle? And they're the ones being targeted on both sides. So they're still willing to stand with us, but our Black men are, well, you know, that shit depends. It depends. You know, it depends. Like, you know, like, you know, I'll defend them if they willing to submit. You know, but if they got that masculine energy, so I don't know them nothing. Do you really think that these white men care? They didn't even know this woman. All they knew is that a man put his hands on a woman and another man decided to put his hands on said woman, and this other man at the same time put his hands on said. You got 3 grown-ass Black men physically assaulting, beating, and assaulting an innocent and helpless Black woman. You can't make this stuff up.
And you said there was a white man that came to render aid for the woman.
Yeah,
who's been assaulted.
Yes, that's the person that called the police.
Now, did he render aid for the Black woman because she was Black or because she was just a woman?
Because she was a woman, he was intervening. He saw that she was a female. Her legs were kicked. It was dark. He didn't know what it was when he ran over there. When he made the 911 call, he didn't say, "Hey, these Black guys are beating on this Black woman." He said, "I hear a lady screaming. I hear a lady screaming, and it's a bunch of guys over there." They told him, "Don't engage." This man was willing to put his life on the line for a Black woman, and Black men will not do the same. Black men got to know everything about the background. They got to know whether or not she knew the motherfucker. Like, depends. Was that her boyfriend? Like, because you know what I'm saying? In the past, like I interject, and then I'm the person that get, going to jail or get locked up, and she go right back to the dude. So I'm not putting my life on the line for her. You think that white man cared that they arrested him?
I mean, in that particular situation, I believe that it deals with a person individually. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe that's a particular race issue. Because
That's
some
the thing.
people,
It's
the
about
reason now listen, the reason why I say that is because the reason why some people don't want to intervene into that situation, because sometimes they risk or harming themselves, which, and honestly, that's very valid. You know, you don't never know the intentions of the other person. The other person probably turn on you and create the same violence on you while you're trying to save that one said person. You know, it's very
possibly.
possible.
And I'm pretty
It's very
sure when that
possible that
911
situation.
caller told, I mean, the 911 operator told him that they were sending help and he should not intervene, I'm pretty sure that he knew that, but he still
Hmm.
intervened. Did you see
Yeah,
her in the aftermath? And this
yeah.
was
This
2 days after she was attacked. Like she
yeah. This
still looked like,
Yeah, that's why I'm making the distinction that it was him who made that personal choice. It didn't have nothing to do that she was a black woman or whatever. It was the whole point that he seen this person and she needed help and he wanted to intervene into that. That's his personal decision and choice that he made. Now,
but his personal decision and choice that he's made is based off of his value system for humanity. That is
yeah,
my point. Black men
that's
don't have a value system for humanity. It's not that black men don't have a value system for just black women. If we look at
well,
John Lee Malvo and their shooting escapade, even though people want to compare them apples and oranges to Dylan Roof, that is it Dylan Roof, the guy that went into the church
hmm
and did the shooting of those 9 people. Nobody ever talked about these 2 black ass men that went across the country and went on a serial killing
hmm
escapade.
but
13 to 16 people shot, 13 people dead. Nobody talked about the fact that these folks were held up eating Waffle House, whatever they wanted to eat. And
yeah,
y'all
yeah,
complaining about this guy going to McDonald's.
but yeah, at the same time, that's dealing with them two men in the action that they decided to do, and when you want to say things like that, basically what you're doing, you're making more of a generalization, saying that this equation fits for all black men when it necessarily don't.
Not
In that
necessarily.
situation, like for me, for example, if that same situation were to happen and I was actually there in a situation, of course I'll intervene because I have a personal integrity and a moral system that I follow by. And if I see it only have to be a woman, it could be another man getting assaulted by another man. I will go and intervene with that because that's the person that I am. I mean, I have nothing to do that I'm black. It don't have nothing to do if they black or white or whatever. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do because they're a human, period. And I have compassion for my fellow human beings. So yeah, I would do that, even possibly lay my life on the line because that does me. But at the same time, I don't expect for other persons to want to think or react or do certain things the same way how I do, because if that be the case, what I'm doing, I'm generalizing them. I'm creating a generalization of them, and that's not fair. That's not a fair assessment.
But actually, it is because in certain states, there are laws against people who do not intervene when bodily harm can lead to death. And so, if
Hmm.
you're standing around watching the violence and you don't intervene, your ass could go to jail and be prosecuted as well. So, that's the thing. That's why it has to be a generalization because a lot of people don't realize that these are laws. So, if law enforcement are reviewing the cameras and they see you standing there watching that, and then you end up in jail for it, then you feel like you got a sense of accountability for it. But if your
Well,
morals and
well, I
ethics
got
are
to.
in alignment, you wouldn't
Well,
have
I
to
got to.
worry about being
Yeah,
prosecuted.
yeah. I got to challenge you on that one too, Dr. J. Because if that was the case, there'll be many people that'll be locked up right now. Because
A lot of people
everybody pulls their camera out and
a lot of
view
people are.
different crimes that happening, but less likely that they end up being in jail. They'll probably become a possible suspect or a possible suspect for set crime, but it's rarely that you see the person whose family being locked up because the crime is being committed.
No, they get
And
locked up
that's
at the
based on
same.
criminology too.
They get locked up at the same rate. They get locked up at this guy right here. He was still locked up. You want to know why? The guy that called the police, he was still locked up because he still committed a violent act. They let him out because it was
The white dude, the
yeah,
white dude who called police got locked up.
yes, they locked him up because law enforcement has a job to do. They have to do their due diligence. So locking him up doesn't mean that he's going to be prosecuted. It means that he's going to be investigated, because guess what? When law enforcement arrive on the scene, how do they know that you told them the truth?
Hold on. Did he get locked up, or did they detain him
No,
for
he
questioning?
got locked up. He got locked up for assault
So,
because they didn't
so he was
have all the
arrested for
facts.
assault?
Yes. He made bail. After he got out, they decided not to prosecute because he was there based on the victim's statement to help. Based on the cameras we just saw, he was not a part of the violent act against the woman. He tried to intervene
Yeah,
to
he was
help
trying
the
to.
woman. He was struck based on outside camera views of the fight, the altercation. And in response to him being struck after trying to break it up and protect the woman, then he protected himself.
Well, in that situation, then yeah, that was a valid reason for them to actually arrest him, because they don't know the full
Of course.
story of what's going on in that situation. That's true. But you made a generalization saying that people who are actually like on recording stuff, they're not doing that. They're not intervening whatsoever. They're just recording the situation as it happening. And you made that generalization, and I'm saying that I have not yet to see anyone being locked up because they're recorded. If that be the case, the lady, like for example, the woman who recorded the whole incident with George Floyd, if that be the case, she would have been locked up for just filming and recording, but she didn't. Instead, she ended up getting what's that? Nobel Peace Prize? No,
She
Pulitzer
did.
Prize for
She
filming.
did. Yeah, she
Filming it.
did. She did. They threatened to detain her. Actually,
Mhm.
once they
Yeah.
removed
They
him from the
threatened
scene,
to
they
detain her.
threatened to detain her because guess what? If she hadn't moved back, they would have. Because guess what that's called?
Um, what was it? Breaching the investigation, something like that.
Interfering with a police
Yeah,
investigation.
police investigate. Yeah,
Exactly.
and so by law, they're saying that you have to either be. I think at the most you have to be like by 6 feet or more away from the actual investigation that's happening. So that's why they kept saying bag up, bag up,
Exactly.
bag up.
But that's the
If you
thing. It's some
don't
people
bag
that
up,
don't
then you
want to
can be
back up.
detained too.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. Some people that don't want to back up, and those people end up arrested. So the thing is, it's all up to the police officer. If a police officer wants to arrest you, that's what you got to understand. Arrests can happen every single day, and these are laws. But most police officers simply don't want to make the appearances because every arrest they make, they have to also testify to their perception. They have to be able to articulate it verbally and written in a report. And they have to appear in court on the date that person is tried for that said case. So some police officers don't want to enforce those laws because they feel like, okay, this will be a waste of my time. They get paid less when they're actually in court than they do as a beat cop on the street. So there are several factors that play into them making the decisions as to whether or not they arrest people. However, these are still laws. These are still responsibilities. You as an American citizen, that's what I try to convey to parents that are about to become parents as they negate their responsibilities to parent. Parenting is about molding, shaping, and cultivating the minds of young people. That's what parenting is about. It's not about getting your kid the new Jordans. It's not about giving your kids the food that you think that they want. It's not giving your kids a household and that's it. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about you preparing them to be adults that are functional and add value to a said society. That's what it's about. So if you fail to educate your child and prepare them to go out into this world in which they are forced to make it in, so they're going to make it one way or the other. And then you make excuses, especially in the Black community, because that's what we do. We say people are targeting our Black and brown boys. But at the same time, and in the same ego, in the same sense, we don't prepare our Black boys to have interactions with law enforcement, knowing that is an inevitable part of life for any human being. You are going to have contact with law enforcement, period. So instead, Black people would rather vicariously traumatize their children and say, look, you see this boy here, hashtag, never mind that he was a dope dealer that killed Pookie and Ray Ray on the corner and somebody saw him. And then also the camera saw him. So they finally, closed the investigation. And upon closing in on the investigation and trying to make the arrest, he shot at the police officers, tried to kill them, put one in the hospital, almost killed him. But he ended up dead, right? But he's a hashtag and he was a good boy because the police killed him. Never mind these things. So as Black people, we have to take accountability for the things that we don't do as parents, because that's what parents are supposed to do. You're supposed to tell your children what the laws are. You know why? You're supposed to go out there and look up what the laws and regulatory authorities say in the area that you are in. It's interesting to me. I have my white parents in my parenting classes, right? This is the really interesting part, because I conduct parenting classes on a consistent basis. Every 6 weeks, I take 1 week off, every 6 weeks again. And I'm always maxed out, have been for the last 11 years, okay? We're talking about 50 participants per parenting class. Some people are court mandated, but guess which ones aren't for the mass majority? White people, Asian people, and Hispanic people. For a Black person to attend a parenting class, they have to be court mandated. They have to have defects involvement. And even if they have those two constraints, they're like, well, when is this over?
So why do you think that's so though? Why do you think Black people don't take them type of opportunities seriously?
Because Black people have a lack of accountability until they get into those said environments where they're actually learning something, because it's not taught to them that this is something that we may need. So to finish my statement, my white clients are the only clients that I have recognized over hundreds of thousands of participants now. They have ever asked the question inside of a parenting seminar before we got to that module, because there are 12 modules they have to complete. Before we got to that module, there is always a white, and an Asian person to ask, well, you know what? I have certain weapons in my home, and I want to know if we're going to cover how we can access the laws around having weapons in the home and how to store them safely and properly, and what are the laws around whether or not my children can access weapons to go hunting, these kinds of things. Nobody asks about that in the Black community, but the Black community is largely responsible for what kind of crime?
Domestic violence, if I'm not mistaken.
The domestic violence with what though? Arms, illegal arms. So it's interesting, and these are cases when they're mandated. Okay, this is the interesting part. When they're mandated, this is always an issue in the Black home with defects involvement, but they never address it, never ask that question, nothing about it. They don't want to ask anything around it. Zero. Black people say, well, parenting doesn't come with the, instruction manual. So, we're just doing the best that we can with what we got.
See, there you go again, generalizing again. The only Black people say that.
I'm responsible.
People say that, period.
So when I conduct these, I just told you it's over 100,000 participants. So this is my 10-year longitudinal study. This is the results. So it's not about an overgeneralization. It's about taking the population that not only myself, I work with, but other clinicians they work with when they do their parenting programs from state to state to state. And I mean, I do my parenting programs in 25 of the 51 states. So I'm pretty comprehensive in what my numbers are, unlike, the nifty Kevin Samuels. Okay, so when I talk about these issues, it's because this is what makes me advocate socially for more education, more elevation, and more insight in the Black community, because otherwise I never would have saw there was an issue. I never would have saw there was incongruence, because the incongruence doesn't exist in my household. So I wouldn't have known that this was something that plagued the Black community as a whole. Seeing the crime statistics go up and down, people kill people. Sometimes they live around them. So what? But seeing the people that are not a part of the crime statistics because they've avoided that by way of derailment and participating in programs like this, right? You see the realities behind what's not in the numbers. So for me, it's about making it make sense, putting the information out there so the Black community is more aware that this is an issue amongst us. As a result, it's something that we definitely need to be active on, and we need to reshape our behaviors around. So when I say that Black men don't feel like they are responsible for the protection of Black women, when they hear women say, well, I don't need a man, how does that make you feel as a Black man?
Well, that They don't need me. But I mean, personally, as a black man, it don't make me feel any type of way because they're just that woman in the space that how the way she feeling. To be honest, if we
So
talk
let's
about me
say you're
personally,
walking, yeah, you personally. Let's say you're
yep.
walking down the street and hold on, I'm sorry, I was looking at this person messaging. Please let me in. Yeah, no, you look like a whole troll. But so it's not discriminatory. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, we ain't doing that. Sorry. Sorry, sir. But so if you're walking down the street, let's say you're walking down the street and you notice on your way home that this young lady is struggling to put her tire on, right?
Hmm.
And you say, "Do you need some help?" She's like, "No, I don't need a man. What I need a man for?" But you see she's clearly struggling.
Hmm.
Do you continue to ask her, "Hey, if you don't want me to personally help, I could call roadside assistance. My roadside assistance will cover you because I'm standing right here. I could stand here and make sure that nothing happens to you. It's dark out here." Do you
My,
feel like any of these things are in your car? So you like, fuck that, that bitch that she don't need me. So do
I mean,
figure it
absolutely. If
out.
she, yeah, absolutely. If I initially engage her and
Mhm.
offer assistance, if she tell me no, then of course I'm gonna keep it moving, because she already made that decision that she got the situation handled and she don't need no further assistance. That's a sign of privacy. If a law enforcement officer were to pull up right next to a vehicle, say, "Hey, ma'am, do you need assistance with changing your tire?" "No, I'm good." "Okay, you're gonna drive right on off." He's not gonna question it. He's not gonna say, "Ma'am, do you know it's dark?" Not gonna say none of that. You just say, "Okay, have a nice day."
Actually, law
Drive on off.
enforcement, nope, law enforcement has a due diligence. After they ask you if you need help and they see that you do need help, they recognize it, they do have to do probing because
Hmm.
that's considered to be suspicious activity. And every time that they stop that car and they turn on those lights, whether those are assist lights or um, you know, violation lights, their system is now recording. Even before their system was recording, every time that they stopped off to ask somebody if they needed help. These are citations.
Hmm.
So they have for every human because they're not on their law enforcement is not only there for locking you up or enforcing the
Yeah,
law.
yeah,
They're
yeah. They there to serve too. Yeah, I
exactly.
got you on that.
They're protectors of a community. So if you need a service and they can help with it, even unlocking your car door if you locked your keys in it,
Hmm.
if they can assist, they will because they have an obligation to, literally. And a lot of people don't know that. But so if a law enforcement officer came by and asked her that and she said no, he would ask, "Okay, have you already called roadside assistance?" Then he would
Hmm.
also ask for her name and information because he now has to
Yeah,
assume.
but that's the only difference there. He's doing that not only because he's protecting the servant, but that's his actual job to do that.
Yeah,
Now,
but
he or she was just a regular person, they'll just ask, "Hey, do you need assistance?" "No." "Okay." And just
I mean,
leave.
some people.
They're not gonna probe like that versus some actual law enforcement agent do that because that's he or she job to do that. That's the point
So
that I'm making.
So some people feel that way, but some people feel like because they are citizens of America, they have a duty to make sure that they're accessible by their fellow American. If they
Hmm.
need help, it's nighttime, it's a woman, she's vulnerable. Have you at least called roadside assistance? If you haven't called roadside assistance, this is a dangerous neighborhood. This is a dangerous area. It's a dangerous time of night to be alone.
Well,
You might want
well,
to get
that
in the car, make
well,
advisements.
Well, Dr. J, and I gotta say you kind of reaching on that one because we in the modern day, but now we in the one modern day era now where she have all that accessibility. She have a cell phone. She could call roadside assistant. That's not their personal responsibility to call roadside assistant for. However, if she mentioned that, "Hey, my cell phone is dead. Could you call roadside assistant for me," or anything like that, then yeah, that's different. But she got all that accessibility. She could call a roadside assistant herself. She probably they're all more likely, if she's a woman, she probably are more likely I already call roadside assistance more likely. And you just so happen to pull it up and you just say, hey, You okay? Do you need assistance? Oh no, I call roadside assistance. I'm good. Or some would even say, no, my husband is on the way. So
Right, but
they'll say that too.
I'm just saying if she just said no. So if she just said no, she didn't need any help, didn't need a man, you're gonna walk off. No probing, no additional questions or anything like that.
Not at all. I'm go ahead and walk off. If she say no, that's her word. She said no. That's
What
it.
about you?
I think I asked another question behind that. She called herself me a dog. I had to ask her to get it. I couldn't just,
Because they
from there about good. Get you away from that place. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, at least make an adequate connection.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
well,
that
well
it's
here's a
different for everybody, but also
here's a oh, I'm sorry. Here's another one point too, and this actually a realistic point too, and this happened actually in my state too. Before a story of this happened, sometimes when that situation happened where a woman is pulled over on the road, she actually be purposely setting the person up so that person could get on jack and stuff too, and that actually happened in the state of Texas too. So you don't never know a person's intentions when you're trying to probe even further stuff. So that's why I'm saying that the general question, the general answer, if you pull it over and say, hey, you okay? Do you need assistance? Oh no, I'm good. Just let it be. It don't make you less than a man. It don't make it seem like you're not doing your due diligence as a man or supporting the said community because you walk away from the situation after when she said she didn't need assistance. That's the point that I'm making in that situation.
I'm reading this comment. That's interesting, Miss Sandy. So no.
Shout out to the producer again.
I know. But so the thing is this, doing your due diligence sometimes means you're intervening in a situation where you don't know what the situation is, but you're doing your due diligence. So what I say is, if you see either a woman or a man, because here's the larger issue right here. If they are setting somebody up, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be your action that you would take to protect yourself if you're walking home?
If
you're walking home and you saw them on the side of the road, what would be the action that you would take? How could you protect yourself if they were setting someone up? Or how would you know? Because now you haven't stopped, you haven't really gotten a good idea of what she looks like. So by the time you are attacked and left and robbed, you don't have anything to even give the investigators.
Yeah, you really reaching down on that
I'm
one.
not.
Because first of all, why in the world am I walking in the wrong roadway where people are driving it to begin with?
Because you're drunk. People can be pulled over. This is Atlanta. I live in Atlanta. So it's a lot of places that you could literally be walking because you had too much to drink. And now you got to walk it off. You got to walk it back to your hotel room. And a lot of people come here. I could pull out our crime stats. I know what our robbery rates are, and I know how they do here in Atlanta. Right. So that's the thing. If you're not vying for at least connecting them with law enforcement, or you're not at least getting close enough to know what your situation is, I call it situational awareness, self-preservation. These are things that we teach to our soldiers in the military all the time. And the reason that I'm going down this narrative is because the less accountability we feel we have to one another, the less accountability they have to us. So police officers can't even protect you. Like, they can't even protect you because you're not aware, because you think that minding your business is the best way to go. Minding your business, not having adequate information to be able to give them as to who it is assaulted you, robbed you, whatever. That's the best way to go. So it's not reaching. It's just probing. So hold on, let me take your other one out. So yeah, but I'm saying it's not reaching. It's just probing, because even though, so these are the things. When I showed you guys the stats, and I can pull it back up if you guys need me to. When I showed y'all the arrest records and reports, right? And we looked at how many assaults Black people our communities were responsible for in the prison population, jail population. When we looked at the stats about crime, the crime statistics, not just in Atlanta, but all over America,
Mm-hmm.
these robberies were a large component to it. So very much to what you're speaking of. That's why I'm probing down, because the reality is you don't know that one thing leads to another thing leads to another thing. That's the problem. So when we don't teach our kids situational awareness and to intervene and to be aware in a greater capacity of what's going on around them, even though you see it as I'm giving this person a courtesy and they saying, well, I don't need a man. What they could be saying to you is, you're not the right mark because you're not in a car, so we can't carjack you. You understand what I'm saying? Whoever they got waiting. And at the end of the day, you keep moving, and then because you've seen them or semi-seen them, they attack you, but you don't even see them coming because for you minding your business, strolling down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the person that gets carjacked and killed right behind their attack on you, and you're the only living witness, you can't even give the police anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's situational awareness. So it's not about, so I think that people don't understand the reason for the rules and the structure of the laws here in the United States. It's not to make you a person that is an outstanding citizen. It's to make you a contributing member of society in all ways. So accountability is just one of those proponents. That's the same thing you're responsible for teaching your kids. And I think that's the reason that so many Black kids are being murdered by police officers. Literally. That's the only difference. I look at tons of footage every day, body cam footage, dash cam footage of interactions with the police officers with Black and brown kids, then interactions of police officer with non-Black and brown kids. That's the only thing that I see that's different. There is a issue, whether we want to call it a thing or not. There is an issue with parenting politics and political, political respect amongst Black and brown people when it comes to men and women. So if we don't close this gap, we don't have a legacy. Like all of this leads to that, like literally. And I don't see how people don't see it. Everybody wants to say, well, you know what? Won't have anything to do with that, or this person don't have anything to do with that. Forget the fact that YouTube is now the largest incentive for human knowledge. Forget the fact that I just showed you guys their earnings. I just showed you their come up. It aligns directly with Kevin Samuels' come up. But not only Kevin Samuels, the entire MGTOW movement. Their greatest amount of money earned from viewers supporting them was in the same month that he took off and the MGTOW movement took off. Nobody sees that symmetry. Not, even though it's right there in black and white. We're going to deny the facts because why? Those facts don't align with the ideology that we've already been conditioned and brainwashed on by Kevin Samuels. So we'd rather look like fools and lose our legacy and have no sense of accountability for who we are becoming. Sounds great to me. So if you guys are ascribing to that kind of foolishness, if that's what you want for your future, by all means, go out there and live your best life. But I'm a person that believes in accountability, and I believe in continuing this legacy, because otherwise that means that there are too many Black and brown people that have died for your position in this society, for you having a voice in this society. So if Black men really feel like they don't have a voice, they don't have influence, they don't have power, those Black men, I'm 100% for people divesting from. Because I feel like when you got to pour into a person that really feels like he doesn't have a dog in the fight, if that's how he really feels, seriously, how can you expect him to represent your population, to protect your population?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To answer your question, even though I still haven't answered it yet.
Go ahead.
Now, to answer it, of course, absolutely. I feel that I have a responsibility not only for my household, my personal household, but also for the community as well. I feel that I do. But however, you also have to understand that there were people like myself were that responsibility only goes so far depending on what we trying to what we saying we want to be responsible for. And I'm talking about for the community concern. Now, we made it one comparison talking about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and all these other men who and other people, well, men in particular, who stepped forth and they became a beacon for the community. The reason why they did that is because they made an actual choice to do that.
Why do you think they
So
made that choice?
because they seen that in that particular time that they seen that it was a serious issue that needed to resolve, and they felt that through their experience and through their educational experience and other type of avenues that they have, that they could render assistance with that particular thing that they was dealing with at that time. So they made that choice to do that. Now, however, there are some men out there, they feel the same way, but they don't want to step all the way out there, just like how Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and all the rest of them did. Because when you put yourself all the way out there like that, you subject not only yourself but your family who you have the original responsibility for, of things or situation happening to them. Then once when they end up happening to you, then they're out with a father, or anything like that and stuff due to that situation. That's the reality how some men feel. You understand what I'm saying? But there are other men
Well, I
who
understand that
that
they
feel.
that way. I
Yeah, there
understand
the other. Yeah, there are the other men that actually will go all out. Case in point with Kevin Samuels, he feel that this situation is valid to him. This is his truth, and he's stepping all the way out because he feel the way he feel, and he don't care about that and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That's his reality, and that's his said truth. Just like, for example, what we're doing right now, where our content, we're stepping all the way out, where we are producing content, throwing out different situations, scenarios, and throwing it out there and then finding solutions for it, regardless if people agree with it or not.
So the difference is, in none of my rhetoric, none of my content that I create do I subscribe to or advocate for violence towards anybody.
Oh
Nor do
no,
I
no,
deny that there are violent issues that are leading to the death of the people in the Black community. I don't
no.
deny.
Well, yeah, the content that you put out, you put accountability across the board. Even though this particular couple of months, or whatever, you've been really focused on Kevin Samuels, which is all valid because he's hot right now. So
Not just
it's
him,
all other.
but
Yeah,
Justin as
it's
well, because those
understandable.
are both, to me, on
But
the same level, very much. And I think that a lot of people miss the connection that Kevin Samuels made to Umar Johnson. He made this connection. These are his words. I'm not misquoting any of his words. He specifically said that he and Umar Johnson agree on a lot of things.
mhm.
Umar Johnson, same said man who has advocated for the annihilation of several Black men, that's on the corner that he can't therapize, psychologize.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
for me, it
because
becomes
they
a
in a
problem
disagreement
because,
with this work.
but I don't think it's about the disagreement in whole. Here's what I say. What I say is what I see. So what I see is that America, especially Black and brown America, who were very much disappointed with Trump in his presidency and what he did for Black people, because they wanted him to go in and do something specifically for Black people, as if Black people aren't American citizens. It's really interesting to me. But in that same mindset, Black people pushed for Trump to be prosecuted and impeached for inciting the riots at the White House because of what he said about the election being unfair and that they needed to take action because they cannot allow the election to be stolen from them. So to say something like that leads Black people to feeling like Trump needs to be prosecuted. Not only that, lining up in insurmountable numbers to be able to see and gravitate to the trial, follow the whole process through as he's meeting with Congress. Okay? But Black people refuse to say the same thing about Kevin Samuels and his rhetoric around Black women. Refuse. Help me understand it.
Well, President, I don't know why I just say Black people. I believe it's certain Black people. Matter of fact, I'm gonna make a distinction with it. I say it was the Black Democrats, majority of the Black Democrat caucuses that was doing that. They want to get Trump impeached, even though throughout his 4-year presidency he did more than enough for the quote unquote said Black community, more than enough, way more than any other one president, including Obama. He did way more policy and everything for us, the Black people.
I say modern day presidents, but Roosevelt and Lincoln they did awesome work in the Black community. Awesome work.
Are we counting them too? Roosevelt and Lincoln.
Oh yeah, because they set the precedent. They set the standard. And specifically, they were the only presidents to do specific things for the Black community.
Which I'm not that. I agree with you. That's absolute facts. I agree with you on that. But I was talking about the actual modern day within the time that we're living in right now. I was talking about that presidency. That's why I made the comparison with Obama and the other presidents.
But so, I feel a couple of ways, but here is the thing. When you have those kinds of numbers showing out for that kind of stuff, okay, to me, I need to understand why Black people feel like Kevin Samuels is not a direct threat to the stability of the Black family. Spitting out ideas that Black women should basically be objectified in every way. Sitting out there and seeding more insecurity. When people talk about they're hating the feminist movement, and the postmodern feminist movement aligns with what he's preaching by telling these women, you have to give these men sex before marriage. What you holding it up for? Because a man is only going to be able to value you based off of your sexual marketplace value. That is your value as a woman. So it's interesting to me that these ideals, these belief systems that he has and the assumptions behind what makes healthy families actually were things that contributed to the violent act against women that led to civil rights movements and feminist movement of the 60s to the 80s, to be honest with you. I'm just going to throw it out there because that's what reality is. Those same ideals led to Black women being objectified and raped and beat terribly during that time. That's why you saw people like Dr. King, Malcolm X. That's why those people were fighting so hard and willing to risk their life. You know why? Because they saw that they came from a Black woman and they valued the struggle of a Black woman in a system, a patriarchal system that only looked at Black women as sex objects.
Yeah.
So they fought for men to have a more ideal framework around what the value of a Black woman was. They fought for men to be removed from their sexualizing Black women because they look good, as they now want to wear these modern day clothes. Back then, modern day clothes. So they didn't want that. And you got to think about it. We wore blouses, and blouses were sexualized. Pencil skirts, past your knees, and they were sexualized. So these are things that led to Black women being raped back then. I mean, in insurmountable numbers. You think that you see crime stats now of Black women being killed now. It was way worse back then. So it's interesting to me when I hear Black men yell out of their mouth, oh, well, feminism is the end of Black men and Black women want to see themselves equal. When Black men were the people who led the feminist movement for Black women to protect Black women back then. It's really interesting when I see these types of things.
Once again, in that particular comparison, Black men technically didn't lead the feminist movement. They led the civil rights movement, and the feminist movement was tied into that because at the end of the day, they was fighting for those. No, at the end of the day, they was
These
fighting
meetings were
for their
taking
civil
place
rights.
every single week. No, it wasn't about the civil rights by itself. So civil rights led to women's rights as well, but the feminist meetings were led by men, Black men that wanted to protect their family system, that wanted to protect the structure of the family, that wanted to protect their homes when they end up not in the homes because they had to work too much. These are realities of back then. I know you guys only see this. I'm talking about the realities of then. This, I've lived through this. So I know exactly what that was about. What's interesting to me is that these are grand perceptions that young people have that have absolutely no fucking idea what it was like back then. But what you guys read on a piece of paper and his story, which is his story. So one person's story. When we're looking around and having these meetings to compare everybody's story while we're making that history. Because we're trying to make a movement to change the way the world sees women and Black women and moves to protect women and Black women more, directly, because Black women were the target of every type of man's rape.
So are you saying that the undocumented history is or his story is irrelevant?
It's various people's insight. And I think that it's irrelevant to the mass story. I think the better story is every person getting the direct connotations, the direct experiences from their grandparents. That's the one thing about American education system that I feel like is the most inadequate at this point. Back in the day, there was a regular thing when it came to American education. When it came time for history reports, you had to go and interview your grandparent. That's the way that you got your information. And then you would come back and you would read the reports out loud to share that information, each person's story with the class. That was called history, because you would learn different cultures and different accounts of history during the same time periods, same movements experienced by the same group of people, but very much different insight. They don't have that anymore because they feel like that's no longer viable. It's no longer important.
I mean, if you're saying that it's irrelevant, that debunks both of our theory. Even talk about the whole feminist movement as a whole, everything that debunk all that.
It debunks
if it's irrelevant
versus how it is that you relate. So a person can read a thing. Research is not reading a thing. Research is going to direct sources that you can verify these experiences with from person to person. So the people that have lived these accounts. So then you align or misalign their accounts to what's written. So then you have a variable index. That's research. Anybody out there who have taken a stats class know about standard deviation. So there's going to be standard deviation to everything that you ever research. And the most important thing to knowledge in life is learning the valuability of people's insights. And you have to learn that perception has a lot to do with reality. So if we shape reality off of one linear thought, we see slavery as the oppression of people, something that retarded the growth of the Black people in America. We see all of those things, but we don't see success. You know why? Because the history books painted slavery as those things. So if that's your story, if that's what you believe, if you move into Black Wall Street being built, how is that possible? How is that possible? You're telling me people who were oppressed, everything negative, weren't educated, had no way of how they were going to live afterwards. You're telling me those same people all of a sudden woke up the day after slavery was abolished and they went and built Black Wall Street? How is that possible? Common sense. That's what it's called. So common
through history, right?
No, it's about
through the
history. Your written history, your textbooks are missing components of lived experiences. If Black people were to connect to family reunions, their actual history from their particular lines, they will understand what contribution, who played in what particular movement that led to these particular things. But they don't do that. I can name lines and names of my family all the way back to 1700. I don't know a Black person in America that was born in America, raised in America that can do that.
So So let me ask you a question about that. You keep on referencing that we need to communicate people who actually lived through that actual era, correct? But what if what if the information that they given is not the 100% accurate account of what happened, but it's just their own personal perspective about that? Do they make that facts, or does there's certain truth?
It
And
makes
that's
it
it.
their fact. So that's your line. So it removes from your mind that you are a part or a direct descendant from the written account that doesn't align with theirs, or does. It gives confirmation of, to that. So the thing about this is that the more people are collecting and doing history taking from their family lines, the more people are connected and understand what their contribution was versus another person said lineage contribution was versus what another person said lineage was when it comes to contribution. So if we are putting them all together, we have a comprehensive truth. So individual truths only tell their story. But if you only have history's story, which is still just one, and you're missing millions and billions of other stories, you can't see a comprehensive truth.
But that's where I'm not understanding about your argument, because ain't that's the same as that thing where they write in the history book, they same as that truth, or they same as that account based on the perspective of what's going on. Ain't that's all one and the same?
No, history books in America are only written based off of one account at a time. Every event is one account at a time. So if history books in America were written based off several accounts in a particular time, then there will be even more comprehensive viewpoints in history, in the books, in the text, more reliability. Mm-hmm. So reliability coefficients only are in alignment if we've done several different studies, same situation, same variables, same components, but we have different accounts for the same situation. That's what makes research reliable. So if your history books are not made in the same way, they are no longer reliable either. So if you don't have several different families, when I say people need to connect, I mean each individual person needs to connect, because each individual person in the Black community getting a greater connection to their history, to their lineage, gives a greater capacity for learning and growth and elevation of the Black community. It removes the ideals that Black people are nothing after slavery. Black people had some white man, invisible white man, standing in front of them like they still do right now. Jim Crow laws are still being re-implemented right now, because these laws, voting laws that require you to have an ID, are suppressing voters' rights. Like Miss Sandy said, you don't need an ID to vote. So anybody can come over here and vote. Mm-hmm. Which, Miss Sandy, that's a misconstruct. They look you up in the voting registry if you don't have an ID either way. I'm just going. So if you're not a documented citizen, you still can't vote. I just want to make sure I put that out there.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, this back on this history argument too. You do realize that history has different components to it, right? There's U.S. history, there's world history. They even have civil history. They have Black history. There are different levels of history. You do understand that, right?
I'm only talking about American history. That's it. So not just Black history in America, American history in general, because Black people's history is a part of American history.
And you feel that the textbooks and stuff that they put out there doesn't give a good comprehensive account of American history?
I know they don't, because I've sat on several boards where we've reviewed textbooks, and I've seen the arguments, heard the arguments, and at the end of the day, a lot of these textbooks that have been implemented in your school systems are not textbooks that are necessarily suggested, or have reliable information, but it barely meets the standard, which is why you see textbooks being phased out, because the arguments behind the scene that you guys don't see, your education committees, these boards, when reviewing the information, nobody can agree because the information is insufficient in the textbooks.
So let me ask you another question. If they were to implement the history based on based on your argument, what you're talking about, how would that look?
Well,
and
it would look like
how would they be able to? And also, follow up question too. How would they be able to teach that within the time frame?
they can more than teach it within the time frame. Many countries do it in less of the time frame. American education is quite redundant, believe it or not. So every other country goes primary education up to fifth grade, then secondary
Hmm.
education is up to eighth grade, and that's it. That's the end of formal education. So how many other years from other people's education systems that are considered to be quite adequate for going into the world and then implement strategies and understandings of every different world and different cultures and things like that. Got it in comparison to America, where American education is more redundant and not preparing anybody for actually going out into the world because they're expecting the parents to do that, but the parents are expecting the teachers to do that. So in comparison, I think American literature and American history could definitely teach what is need to be taught to these kids, but they just don't want to do it anymore. They don't want to
Okay.
do it anymore. Back in the day, they used to have history books that were more comprehensive, and they would tell you that this is so and so's account. This is so and so's account. This is so and
Hmm.
so's account. They moved away from that because they wanted comprehensive history books. They wanted comprehensive literature books and comprehensive grammar books that only spoke to one language, one story. So it's in alignment and congruence with one another so that the history and ELA um, subjects could align with one another as kids were going through school getting that education. But these are things that, you know, Black people have also had a word on, and they voted to have these things because it made education easier. It limited the amount of homework and research at a young age. These are things that I feel like, how are you not aware of these changes that happen in your education system when the main argument of Black people is that, oh, our kids aren't getting an adequate education,
Hmm.
as if it's only Black people that's not getting adequate education in America.
Well, I feel that it had nothing to do with race. I think it's people in general that the education system in America could be improved. But for sure, once again, your argument with the history thing, I don't know. I'm very uncertain about that because it to me, in my understanding, it seemed like you want them to have all this information from American culture from the beginning of time where America first became America all the way up into right now into this huge book or whatever how way you want to put it. And to me,
Well,
I just don't see that
how many
being
classrooms? So let
possible.
me ask you this question: how many classrooms have you been in schools today? Because I've been in classrooms for the last 10 years observing the instruction that
You
teachers
ask me
give
how
to
many
their students.
you
Yeah.
asked me how many classes I've been in general
Yeah, how many
throughout my
classrooms have you
lifetime.
sat through? Because you no, not as a student, as an observer, outside observer, observing the new practices of teaching. Because I'm a huge advocate. As a mother, one of the main things that was important for me when I wasn't on assignment is to come and sit in my kids' classroom in the back and see what's going on in the classroom.
Oh well, I
So
do that all the time with my children. If that's what you're talking about, yeah, I do that all the time. Observe.
so okay, so sitting in the classroom of American classrooms now, middle school, elementary school, and high school, in comparison, what is it that you think your kids are learning?
You got to rephrase the question because I'm not understanding it.
What do you think teachers are teaching in the classroom?
Um, they're teaching education,
How many
but
days
yeah, be more specific what you're talking about.
how many days a week are they educating kids in the classroom?
They're educating them what 5 days out of the week? Yeah, Monday through Friday, 5 days out of the week, and they
Across
sit
the
in
board.
class for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week.
Yeah, so across the board from elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Hmm. Yeah, same process. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, which that's 40 hours a week of education.
So how many other people that are on here have had access to classrooms, or you guys have been in classrooms of your own and from 2007 to current modern day right now? That's my question, and I want you guys to answer the same questions that I just asked them. If you've been in the classroom, if you graduated during that time, if you checked out a student during that time.
Yeah, your question was asking about unobservant. It didn't you didn't ask the question, did we
Yeah,
actually
in your
attend?
observations, how often have you observed children being actually educated by the teachers in those classrooms?
Yeah, through my personal experience throughout the whole school year. Because that's, to be honest, that's a responsibility of the parents to know what the educational system is teaching the children. It ain't just the teacher's
Well,
responsibility.
I no longer have kids in the school system. My kids probably spent about maybe 3 days in the American education system. However, in sitting in classes and taking standardized tests right alongside American educated kids, my kids are way Lexile scores off the charts, way off the
Hmm.
charts. Why do you think that is? They've never been educated by any American education system. I'm talking about my kids from age 32 now, all the way down to my kid that's a 6-year-old. My 6-year-old child reads on a sixth grade level.
Hmm.
So again, I'm going to ask you, what is your school system teaching your children? I've
Yeah,
been
that,
in, I've been inside of these classes. I've observed what high school looks like. I've even checked out the one day that I allowed one of my kids to attend high school. Who says that it could be an off day, right? I'm a therapist, so I have some kids that are teenagers in school, middle school kids in school. So I
yeah,
like to see the kids in their natural environment. If you're telling me a kid has ADHD, according to your theory as a school psychologist, when I come in as a therapist, my observation needs to be that they're definitely in alignment with said diagnosis. So, in my observation of those students, if I'm checking out a student, I wait in the office because I want to hear over the loudspeaker the amount of noise and distraction in the classroom before I make an observation of this child outside of the classroom and their ability to pay attention when they're with me. So, for me, from school to school to school to school, in every school district, before I decided to advocate on the school board, because like I said, I'm an advocate. I'm a person that sees a problem and I do something about it. I don't just talk about it. But I feel like the conversations have to be had because oftentimes parents don't feel like it's their responsibility because they don't feel
hmm
like the community is their responsibility. They don't feel like these kids that are learning are their responsibility because at the end of the day, they're not their kids, but they are your kids because they are your future. So what these kids don't learn, what these kids don't get from your American education system is a direct reflection on you as a person who is responsible for, as a lay citizen, advocating for more comprehensive education for these kids, or maybe pulling these kids out of these schools altogether and allowing parents to get back to parenting by finding ways to be interdependent on one another as a Black and brown community. But if you
hmm
divest from one another, how can you do that?
yeah,
If you
I
don't
could
feel
agree.
like you're accountable to one another, how can you do that? These kids don't learn anything in these schools. The education system, if we look at what the SLOs, the student learning outcomes are, SLOs outline the course syllabus. So if your course syllabus in 12th grade is the same syllabus as an 8th grade education, side by side comparisons, these are federal standards of education, by the way.
Hmm.
So you have to help me understand how it is that we don't go into schools and we actually think that these schools are educating our kids. Have you ever sat your child down and given them just kind of like a serious rundown of topics about world history, significant movements, dates, times, places? Have you ever done that with your kid just to kind of see what it is that this education system that you're entrusting with your child's education is teaching them? Because these are things that they're redundant about teaching according to them
Hmm. So
based on their
yeah,
articles.
absolutely, I am. But once again, that's a responsibility of the parent to teach on that level of education, which I don't disagree with that at all. That's, I believe that should be implemented.
So
At the
if you
same
have an
time,
education
now
system,
this, yeah, at the same time, the American educational system, that you got to understand that it's on a certain levels of curriculum that they can teach these children. The other part of that, as you stated, is really based on the parent and based on their level. Now, if you get a parent who's not as we say educated on like world history or finance or anything like that, then yeah, they're enabling their children, and that's creating what is known as a generation curse.
Maybe, possibly, or you hold your educational system responsible for what it's supposed to do.
Yeah,
Primary
that too.
education means that you're teaching kids how to learn said education that is going to be rendered at the next phase of education.
Mhm,
So, if your primary school was doing their jobs, if those teachers between kindergarten or pre-kindergarten all the way to 5th grade were teaching your kids how to acquire knowledge, how to properly do basic level research, the importance of research, importance of biology, it would be preparing those kids for the next phase where
mhm,
eventually they're going to start having to apply themselves. So the system in America is meant to prepare the child, enrich the child again. So enrich means we're going to go over the same things we taught you for 5 years
mhm,
again in these 3 years. And then we're going to revisit the same exact education in the high school for 4 years.
mhm,
And in this 4 years that we revisited, we're no longer going to be responsible for you learning things because you already know this stuff because we taught it to you before and it's quite redundant because you've had it twice. Now we're teaching you how to apply the knowledge that you've acquired and the learning abilities you've acquired, the research methods that you've acquired, so that you can go out into the real world and be productive and successful in applying that at a higher level of education. That's how it's supposed to be set up, just for you guys that didn't know.
mhm,
Now, they fail to do these things when they don't create structure. Because what did I tell you about the amount of disruption in the classrooms at the high school level? There are tremendous disruptions. Classroom, there is no way that a literature class in the middle of a literature class should sound like boom, beats and things. You understand what I'm saying? For the
mhm,
duration of the class, kids are on Snapchat, distracted by their cell phones, on cell phones having conversations. Nobody's learning anything. These are sporadic days throughout the year. So I'm literally checking into these history classes of these high schools at least 40 of the 91 days that they're in school.
mhm.
And then they ask these kids how it is that they don't know the concepts that have been taught. They can't pass the final exams. It's because parents are actually sending their kids to school without a checks and balances system. And they teach checks and balances, by the way, in middle school to
Mhm.
kids. It's first introduced in elementary school in 4th grade. But so I think
Where they teach that at?
4th grade and 4th grade history, checks and balances, when they start talking about world history, they start talking about different levels of government.
Talking
And
about
that's
in
the
America?
yeah,
In
that's the
America?
standard in American history. That's the standard. Look at what is that? Core core standards of competency in education. Look at the
Mhm,
4th grade education standards. That's what they're supposed to be learning. Checks and balances, kings, queens, and consultants or financial advisors. Then they're supposed to be learning about legislative, judicial, and executive branches of government, basic presidents, all of the names of the presidents in America. When it comes to American government, they're supposed to learn about the Revolutionary War. This is their introduction into all of those things. That's what they do the
mhm,
whole year. So if they're learning about checks and balances systems and they don't have that at home actually happening, where because the reference they give is home to school to environment.
mhm.
That's what the teachers are supposed to be given. Okay. I'm just going off of what Common Core standards are. I'm a parent who educates their kids at home because I make the time to spend with my kids because it's necessary. I want my
Yeah.
children to be ready to go out into the world, not in America, because
Um,
we live
I
abroad.
mean, yeah, everything you're saying in this particular case, yeah, I agree with you on that. But the only main element, if we trying to break down the American educational system, the only main element that's hindering that is the difference between the public school system versus the private sectors. Now, I know without a shadow of doubt, the private sectors like the private sectors, Ivy Leagues, and the different other education systems like that, they do teach their children everything that you're talking about, but the public school system is different. They only teach, in other words, they only teach the students to be, as you call, productive employees. So it could be productive adult employees. So they just teach them just the bare minimum. That's it. That's why they have minimal information about, as you say, check and balances. They have minimal information about how to handle finances. They have minimal information about any type of history whatsoever, whether it's world history. But if you're in a urban community, they definitely gonna teach you some Black history, depending on where you live at in your state. They'll teach you about Black history, and that's about it. That's all they have to work with, and that's it. And of course, they drilling standardized tests to them to keep constantly testing them. But even with them, the test is not teaching them nothing that's going to benefit
That's
them.
what I'm saying. So if they're having standardized tests assess for your knowledge on Common Core standards. That's
Mhm.
everything that I mentioned. So
Yeah, absolutely.
if they have to, they can't just teach them Black history, because Black history isn't even a fraction. It's like 3% of the standardized test at third grade and fifth grade. So essentially, it's focusing on world history and the wars and the times, date, names, and places.
Mhm.
But and checks and balances. So government institutions, government systems, and how
Mhm.
one
Yeah,
each one
economics
relates
and
to the other.
everything. Yeah.
Right. But no,
Mhm.
at that point they don't focus on economics yet. Economics is actually emphasized in eighth grade and then again in ninth grade or 10th grade, depending on which one government economics class the kids take.
Mhm.
Um, but that's why it's a requirement. So whether or not your kid is getting what's supposed to be taught is what's up for question, because most parents are not prepared to teach their kids at home. They are the people who are responsible. And if the parents can't teach their kids at home, because it takes literally a village. I know so many people like to say, oh no, it only takes two parents to raise a child. It doesn't. If you really ascribe to that, you're probably one of the people out here with kids with serious doubts about self and life in general, issues with social and inhibitions and things like that. Because if you really think that it only takes two parents to raise a child, you're struggling for one. Your kid doesn't have any sense of accountability for two, because those are the things that shape accountability and respect politics amongst kids. Having grandparents involved in the system, aunts, caregivers at the daycare, teachers, all of these people shape your kids' perceptions around how to look at authority. And parents who ascribe to oh, well, you don't have to listen to them, that's not your parent. And then you wonder why your kids are so lost. These are things to me that are out of alignment with the politics of what it meant to be Black family, the discord, the disconnect, conditioning people to think that a relationship is based off of a woman giving a man sex. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? A man making money. Who would have thought? Seriously, a woman serving a man food. Who raised you? This is how I feel when I listen to Kevin Samuels spew his rhetoric. Because guess what? A woman giving a man sex didn't lead to stability of homes. It just didn't. It never has, it never will. Communication does. Adequate communication, mutual respect politics in the household, the correct balance, and people leading from their position, doing their part in the household, understanding the importance of interdependence in the household. These are things that create successful relationships, not all that other stuff. It just doesn't. So when we talk about the influence of social media on the perceptions of people and their brains and their development in theory, we have to look at the facts. The facts are YouTube is extremely large now. YouTube is the main influencer when it comes to social media. And I just showed y'all the numbers. Literally. That's the main influencer of human conditioning. You can't make this stuff up. So when the vast majority of money is made during said content creators blow up, grow up, glow up, who can we contribute it to? So when I say basic common sense, I know you know basic math. Like, you understand? I understand like some common sense is not common to everybody because it depends on what society, environment you were raised in and all that good stuff. But basic common sense, the basic numbers, the basic algorithms is easy even for a child to see. They can look at those numbers and correlate. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. This is definitely a contributor. I think some people need, I don't know. There are people that need the stuff to slap them in the face in order to understand it.
Yeah, but yeah, at the end of the day, people they have their own personal truth that they that they believe in. It's just what it is, you know. So if there's if I know we're talking about Kevin Samuels, and I said this before. If that's his
Well, it's
personal
not
truth and he
all
believe
about
in that,
Kevin
then it's just
Samuels.
what it is.
So this conversation was not all about Kevin Samuels. So that's the first thing. And I didn't show any Kevin Samuels rhetoric or videos today because I refuse to show anything else of Kevin Samuels, air anything else of Kevin Samuels on this channel because of the huge impact as it comes to respectability politics in the Black and brown community amongst Black people and Black women and men in general. So for me, the larger issue is there is a huge issue when it comes to violence in the way that men view and respect women. Therefore, there is an incongruence in the way that women view and value men. If men are innately the protectors for women, and the reality is this, even though Kevin Samuels has a huge impact on people who are like glued to the internet, which the vast majority of Gen Zers and Gen Xers, they are glued to the internet. There are still several men who are out here and very present in their homes and very present in their community and who respect their women. But when there is literally a pandemic and your Black women are being murdered in these streets in insurmountable numbers by your Black men, and Black men refuse to take accountability for that, I have a problem with that. Other than that, I thought that Kevin Samuels was just as free to have his speech and his perspective than anybody else. But what I will not do is I will not play any type of content whatsoever of a YouTube creator who is out here pushing Black men to think that they need to divest from Black women. Same thing when it comes to Cynthia G. Because at the end of the day, you're not preaching an adequate, I guess, message to Black people. If you say that you are there for the betterment of the reconstruction of the continuation of the legacy of Black people, make it make sense to me. You have respectable Black men that have died, who have given their lives, who prioritize the Black woman amongst anybody, above anybody, who prioritize the Black family. That's other Black men, by the way, and their growth amongst anybody else in this world, and lost their lives as a result of it. And we're still the same Black people who can actually sit here and support somebody like Kevin Samuels that goes directly against that. To me, that says that you definitely are exactly what Cynthia G calls you. To me, that's exactly what it is, because that is treason. It's treason against your ancestry, literally. You got this man, he left his kids on this earth without a father, left his wife on this earth without a husband, because he believed in the Black agenda moving forward in congruence and inclusivity. And Black people are now moving so far away from that and think that they need their separate spaces. They now support segregation again. Make it make sense to me. If you're so far removed from your lineage and from your history that these people died in vain, that they left their children without adequate guidance and structure and continuation of legacy directly from their father, if you really believe that way, you definitely don't need to be a part of this Black community, because the continuation of the Black community is something that is definite. But the continuation of the Black community does sometimes request and require that people who are advocates of the continuation of our legacy fight to separate ourselves from the fools, because we won't be associated with foolery. Greatness and foolery don't align with one another. And for me, it's about accountability. It will be foolish for us to move away from the people who have identified themselves as people who fought hard and long. And even Malcolm X, and I'm totally against Malcolm X principles, okay? But when Malcolm X can decide to take up arms and violence to protect his Black woman, I'm 100% with him on his ideals. Because the reality is, these men right here are not representative of what it means to be an Afro-American man, what it means to be a Black American man. And so for me, it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. For your ancestors, it's an embarrassment. Equally, there is no person who lived through these various movements who approves of the way that Black people conduct themselves today. The amount of disrespect that's in the music, the amount of disrespect that's on the streets, the amount of murderous behaviors that they have, none of this stuff is a part of the Black agenda. None of it. But I hear so many Black people, same Black people that's in the hood, talking about Wakanda forever. Make it make sense to me. Make it make sense to me. So this show is about accountability. This particular show was specifically about accountability when it comes to the insurmountable amounts of domestic violence against Black women, intimate partner violence of Black women in marriages with abusive men. At the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that this is an issue. We have to acknowledge that Black men, in a lack of personal accountability and personal respectability politics, those two components are dangerous for the continuation of the Black community. Because we've been seeing way too many times that Black men are killing their legacy off. Like, this man literally murdered his special needs child. And Black people, y'all really don't see nothing wrong with that. That's interesting to me. Not only that, but he literally spoke a Kevin Samuels speech. I'm not sorry for any of this. This is just what it is. So if we are to say that every man, regardless of how extreme his actions, regardless of how extreme his belief systems are, is just entitled to their perception, it can't be dangerous to the nation of men that they're definitely influencing, how irresponsible are we as people? What does that say about us? What does that say about our commitment to, or lack thereof, when it comes to our community? Like, I feel like asking that question, when I asked you that question on your show yesterday, I asked that question for a reason. Did I know that your other guest was going to say, nah, because these negative experiences lead me to feel this way? No. But I do know that there is an abundance of Black men who feel that way. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a Kevin Samuels with all these followers. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
So understanding that that is an issue, the larger the male voice becomes, the more prevalent the male security becomes, his sense of self. The larger the grandiosity of the male, the more influence that male has on other males who are coming behind him. Regardless of whether or not Black men feel like they have a voice or not, feel like they have power or not, Black men are some of the most powerful men in the world. And they want to act like they don't have said power. and feeling like they have a low sense of self, or that they're underappreciated, or they're disrespected, or they're slighted, or they're rejected. When a black man feels like it's okay for him to be violent towards a black woman because this black woman fought to be equal, you offered to buy her a drink, bro. Like, what are we talking about? You offered to buy her a bottle of wine. And because she told you no, you felt like it was okay for you to beat her ass. Not only you, but your fellow black men joined in on it too. Mm-hmm. And black men, are y'all really saying that this is not an issue? Like, it's beyond me. Meanwhile, the other two guys are still out there. The only one been arrested is one of them. Like, help me understand. So you're not going to tell me that no black person who saw this video that has now made national news knew any of these guys. Not all of them, but any of them. What does that say about the accountability politics in the black community?
So that snitches land in ditches. What you talking about?
That's it. That's what it says. Say we believe that. You know what I'm saying? That's what we believe. We don't believe that it's, it's important for us to protect black men. We feel like if you snitch, there has to be some level of repercussion. So I feel like if we're doing our due diligence, if we feel like we have a greater sense of responsibility to our community, we behave in that way. That's how I feel. The less amount of responsibility we have to our community, the less we tie ourselves to our community, link ourselves to our community, the less accountable we are. So that means our crime rate increases. The black man is a necessary component to stop the foolishness in our community, because the black man is a force to be reckoned with. So whether the black man feels like black women support him, whether the black man feels like black women are behind him, whether the black man feels like the rest of the world supports and finds validity in his voice, black men should be outraged. Tamika Mallory should not have been a face in the aftermath of George Floyd. I find that to be problematic. But all these black men want to reference his death now. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I feel like all these male voices, all these black men should have been right there, right next to her, advocating just as hard, putting it out there, not only with their words, but with their actions, saying that Black Lives Matter. You know why? Because it does start in our community. Like, if we can stop the violence in our community from these particular acts of domestic violence against women in our community, against young boys in our community, against one another in our community, against black men in our community, if we can stop these things, we can now position ourselves for a greater level of advocacy and move our people forward. But we can't do that until we call a thing a thing. We have a problem with that. Like, for me, asking black men, what do you feel your responsibility to your community is me trying to assess whether or not you know your worth. Me trying to assess whether or not you know your value. Me trying to assess whether or not you know your importance in the grand scheme of things. And I'm disappointed every single time until I saw that black man's response. So we need more black men like him.
So since you're talking about that situation again, I got another question about that. Now, if the situation was in reverse, where it was on the actual a man, or since we're saying black, if it was a black man getting beat up by multiple women, and he's getting beat up, and you just so happen to be an onlooker there, but would you go and intervene?
I have. Actually, I did a Facebook Live about it because it was so disheartening to me that here it is. You got somebody approaching 60 fucking years old. That's a woman intervening on two young men fighting and about to kill themselves in a public place in the mall. And all these big black men, and this is Atlanta, big black men with their huge Jordan shoe boxes, okay, sitting at these tables right around them. I'm eating my lunch just like you, but I thought it was important enough to get these kids off of each other because now you're face blooded. You trying to step on this dude's face and bashing his head in, but everybody's looking. Nobody's intervening. It took me to get those kids off of each other. And it was 3 of them, 2 of them against 1. It didn't have, I didn't have any issues.
And then did you intervene because it was on a black situation, or did you intervene because you did because that's the right thing to do?
I intervened because for me, the black and brown community is one that I identify with in America, and I feel like needs to be protected, needs to be redirected. And we're the only ones that behave like fools in public, where everybody is here to look.
So you did the same thing if it was on a white man getting beat up by white women?
Absolutely not. My responsibility to my community is black people.
I absolutely would, because at the end of the day, even though I have a responsibility for the black community, I also have a responsibility for human life, period. You know what I'm saying? So it really doesn't matter.
Not for me. My responsibility is 100% to my community. That's it.
Then that's not. Then you just became a disservice. Even you being a military veteran, you just became a disservice for your country, because at the end of the day, the country is not black or white. It's American, right?
So my country only requires that I place a call. So I'll call help for them, but I'm not.
Ain't that the same thing what they did though? Everybody else did. They just called, right?
They ain't called no damn help. They were eating their food. What part you don't understand? Nobody calling no police. Ain't nobody pulling out no phones, even recording. They were eating their food, minding their business. A couple of them was moving the hell out of the way, because as they took the fight from one side to the next side, it started to, they ain't care. Like literally, it took me a good 5 minutes to realize what all the commotion was about, because I didn't even look back. It was behind me. I'm eating my food, watching my business. Then I started looking at the faces of people, and they all just looking. Fuck COVID, okay? This is the middle of COVID. You understand what I'm saying? So damn that. They were just trying to finish their food. They didn't care about nothing else. So had there been another situation where it was a white people involved, then I would have did the white people thing. I would have called the police and reported the crime.
So you said up here, so you said up here, you mean to tell me that your military veteran, right? And y'all got deployed to West Africa, for example. You get deployed to West Africa, right? Into that particular region of that continent. You observe a certain behavior that's happening right now in that continent. And you mean to tell me that even though you're a military veteran, whatever, so right, you got deployed into that country, you see a citizen who is white. You mean to tell me that you wouldn't go out and render well service to them, even though it's the duty to your country to help assist?
It depends.
Internationally.
It depends, because even when I was in Africa and I saw villages of people being annihilated, murdered, raped, cut up, things like that, I didn't intervene until it became an inconvenience. So
no, you didn't intervene because it wasn't required for you to intervene into that situation, because it was a part of your it wasn't part of your command to do that.
I did intervene. It was just for me. I had enough, and we had strategized well enough to say, okay, well, it's 4 of us. It might be 16 of them, but if we strategize, if we maneuver in this way, we're going to be able to take them all. So it's about assessing the situation. In a situation where these people are actively involved in a fight, and this isn't a hostile environment, there are no weapons involved, guess what? The police gonna handle that, okay? But if they're I'm gonna handle that, because at the end of the day, you're an embarrassment on me. And at the end of the day, when people that are older than these young people intervene and we have conversations with them, because that's all it took. It took me physically separating them and having a conversation with those young black men and letting them know that you're bigger than this moment. So whatever it is that drove you to hitting, beating, punching, kicking, scratching, whatever y'all got going on, that stuff be handled in a different way. So if we're talking about another country and their value systems are different than ours, even if radicalism is going rampant through the countryside, I'm not going to intervene unless it says self-preservation is going to protect me and what I'm doing. I don't need somebody else to direct me. I retired as a colonel. So at the end of the day, I don't need somebody to give me actions that I can take during this situation. It's just about, can I be of assistance and still get out of this country? So it's about being able to assess the situation. In that situation in the mall, there are no weapons involved, well, a knife, that, no weapons that could harm people, innocent bystanders, incidentally. Okay. So you have to direct knife, action, knifing, you got to do that to hurt somebody else.
But I mean, that's the argument that people are making, though, that at the end of the day, it's their choice to choose if they're going to intervene into it or not. And even though if they choose not to intervene, that doesn't mean that they're not represented that said community.
Well, it's not about representing for me at that point. For me, it was about me feeling shame associated with two black young boys jumping another black young boy. So it really wasn't about just representing my community. It was about me helping them to understand how they were misrepresenting our community. There is a stigma associated with being black. When you are a black person and you feed into the stigma and you do the same things that the rest of the world see you doing, you are an embarrassment to the many ancestors that you are representing every single day that you walk out of your house. So this is a larger conversation of accountability that needs to be had with these young people. But for these young people who were 15 and 18 and 17, they had no idea. They didn't see the congruence. After having a conversation with them for about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm pissed off now because I had to leave my food.
Mm-hmm.
They finally saw the congruence. They finally looked around them and saw all these people who are not black or brown. They don't look like them and how they're looking at them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So sometimes it takes leveling and education and stop making excuses, because it's black people. That's what we do. We have every excuse, but we have zero viable solutions because we will talk ourselves out of being great before we step into our final purpose in life and pursue our passion in life and become great. That's what we're known for.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the only part about it is that I just believe that you're just being disingenuous with your argument, because it's once again it's generalizing black men, period, and it is placing a certain level of accountability where that particular type of accountability that's based on choice depending on the situation, which you clearly gave several examples of that. With your personal self, you said that, hey, if this situation were to happen this certain way, then yeah, I would intervene, or if this situation were to happen this certain way, I wouldn't intervene. So if that be the case, it's disingenuous to say that every black man should be held accountable for that situation. But that's not true.
Held accountable for reconditioning black men. That's the argument. And that's not disingenuous. That's a fact. You are your brother's keeper. Every black man is a direct reflection of another black man. That's why they see a black man, they say you fit the description, but you don't look shit like him. But you are black. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm saying that argument. I agree with you on that one.
There is nothing disingenuous about that. For me, my accountability and my responsibility is to my community. My community. There are no Finnish American people that are of white descent or white pale faces here in America that I can identify in America while in America. But when I go home to Finland, we don't have these types of atrocities. We just don't. We don't have people killing people and holding people up and murdering their ass. We don't have people shooting up schools even. We don't have people going on shooting sprees. We don't have people inner city violence. We don't have people beating down women because they turn them down for buying them a bottle of wine. That shit only happens right here in the Black community. Find me one case, one where a white man did the same thing in response to a woman turning down. Just one. You ain't even got to find the 3 Black men that did it. Just, I mean, 3 white men. Just one. No, right here in America. Finland? Even in Finland, it doesn't happen there either. But find it right here. It could be one Black man that beat the hell out of one white man that beat the hell out of a white woman for turning him down at a gas station when it came to him buying her a bottle of wine. Just one. It don't even have to be the 3. Like 3 white men don't have to make an ass out of themselves. Just find me one. I'm just saying. You can't make this shit up. We have a problem, and we have a problem with accessing and addressing the fact that we have a problem. We have a problem with calling a thing a thing. Like, I don't understand what is wrong with Black people. We're conditioned naturally to excuse inexcusable behavior. But you don't want to do that shit in your house, though. As soon as your kid go out there and do some crazy shit, then you want to hold them accountable in the home. But collectively as a community, that definitely has an influence on the societal and environmental exposures and conditionings of your kid, you won't hold them people accountable. It's crazy to me. Let a Black kid go and get another Black kid pregnant. Or let a Black kid go get a white kid pregnant. Any kid pregnant. You're going to sit down and have a whole conversation with that guy. That requires having a conversation. Not the system that influenced the behavior or the perceptions or the beliefs or the norms of that behavior. That goes against your intersystemic conditioning of that child at home in the family of origin. But we're going to have a conversation about why it is that you defied my rules and stepped out, and now you've got a girl pregnant. I told you should be wearing condoms. I told you should be not having sex. I don't know what y'all do. But you're going to sit down for a conversation around accountability when it comes to that, because it directly impacts your home. So my question is now to Black people, do you wait until it hits your house? Do you wait until your child becomes the statistic? Do you wait until Pookie and Ray Ray kill your child? Then is it an issue for you then? Because what I see congruently amongst the Black community, even when it comes to celebrities in the community, it's never an issue until somebody's dead. I see it with Tyler Perry every day. I called for his accountability, what was it, year before last, when Keisha Lance Bottom, who is a Black female mayor, denounced the police system that was literally trying to support and protect our community. And after being beat down by a Black man, Rayshard Brooks, her statement defunded the support, not the finances, support of Atlanta police officers, which directly led to the death of an 8-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. And she had the nerve to embrace the mother. What will you tell that mother? You don't believe that police officers are here to protect and provide. When they were at said site, when they were making sure that this was safe, you removed them. As a result, violence escalated and Black men murdered this young baby. Zero accountability. No Black people calling for the accountability of Keisha Lance Bottom for an 8-year-old innocent child that never asked to be dead, being dead. But Black people definitely want to hold up signs and march and do all of this, spew all this rhetoric for Rayshard Brooks, who had zero accountability, that fought police officers trying to help him through his situation. So make it make sense to me. Make it make sense to me. The only accountability that we want to have is accountability of other people doing things to us. Has zero to do with accountability within our system. Just so you can have a very clear picture painted, I never said that women didn't need men. Quite the opposite. So, and it doesn't matter whether women say they don't need men or not. The realities are, even when women were saying they didn't need men, you had Black advocates in the past generation of Black men, where Black men really meant something to the community, still advocating for the Black woman, regardless of what she said. Maybe you don't know when Malcolm X was assassinated. You know what I mean? That's interesting to me. Like, you young people, the ignorance is ridiculous. The disconnect is ridiculous. Like, I don't understand how these people really died for this to be born. Like, this is beyond me. It's embarrassing. Like, who raised you? I think that these are things that older people need to be sitting down, having conversations with one another, and just trying to figure out where the disconnect happened. Like, were you too much in the coke era, like heroin era and things like that? Like, that your kids just didn't get their legacy? I don't know. But I want to continue to know you guys' insights around these accountability conversations. I definitely want to know whether or not you feel like Black women are still equally the least protected people in America. I want to know if you feel like they're pretty protected. If you guys feel that way, please definitely cite your sources, cite your arguments, give me some facts to go off of. And more importantly, I want to know the answer to the question, what do you feel like your contribution to your community is? What do you feel like your community needs from you, whether it welcomes it or not? So I want to thank the official urban therapist for coming on and sharing his insights. I want to thank the official urban therapist for coming in and, protecting his energy center, saying, damn that, I ain't got no time for these women that keep going back and forth to their abusers. Also, I think Mr. Brooks was the one. Didn't he say the thing about him helping out the woman that went back to the guy? I caught that, but I didn't catch it. But I'm definitely going to go back and reply to you guys' comments. Shout out to the chat. I think you guys were definitely engaged and live and all that good stuff. But, I had a lot of content to present today. And it is beyond smoldering in Georgia. Okay. So when you say domestic disputes, are you only referring to situations where the person knows that other person? By the way, domestic disputes are disputes between people. Doesn't matter if they're family or not. We ain't say domestic violence. Domestic disputes are between citizens of the United States that know each other. So yeah, continue to share your insights. It's been real, you guys. Official urban therapist, tell them where they can find you and all of your information over there on supporting the Kevin Samuels movement, debunking the Cynthia G. Kevin Samuels.
Well, good evening, everybody. As you all know, I am the official urban therapist. You can find me on all the platforms. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all them good old sources. So you find me there, and you just type in the official urban therapist, and I guarantee you, I will pull up and you will see me.
Google that guy. He even got podcasts out here, so you can listen to him while you're in your car, you're driving. You know what I'm saying? While you're on the phone with your boyfriend that you're trying to get back with, and you want some advice. You know what I mean? At least he got the
Absolutely,
credentials.
absolutely. Well, this has been a very enlightening and also a great discussion, and we actually had a great debate too. I actually enjoyed it. Yeah, I I had you against the rope on some of the issues that I challenged
You
you
think
on,
so?
but you bounced back, tried to
You think
bounce
so?
back on a lot of them. So
I don't know. You know what
can't
I'm
knock
saying?
you on
I
that.
was taught
Can't
good
knock
with
you on that.
debating, so and I come from a family of lawyers, so it's that educate. It's a lot of information. You know what I mean? So, and what I
Hmm.
tell people is this: I'm a sponge for education and information and collective experiences, but also I give validation to people's personal insights. So the thing is, if you understand that there are no universal truths when it comes to knowing one collective truth, right? Because a universal truth means there is one, there's not a collective. When I
Hmm.
say that people need to connect themselves to the various components of history that have, spewed their lineage, it's very important so that you can understand what the collective truth tells us about history. Collective truths are individual perceptions, guided and shaped by individual perceptions and individual experiences of those perceptions. So, cultivation, culture, insights, other experiences that teach them how to now respond to these experiences and process that information from these experiences and then apply their theories behind why these experiences are happening. So, what I say is the more you know, the more you grow. If you subscribe to one particular person's mindset, it will get you fucked up every time because like literally I cannot say how many kids spew these inaccurate stats that Kevin Samuels manipulates. Like the dude has said himself that he manipulates the statistics, makes it make sense.
But by the way, y'all, it is all footage. She said that the show they had nothing to do with Kevin Samuels, but yes, she keep
Yeah, he's a
on
part of
bringing
the
bringing her boyfriend up, Kevin Samuels, for
show.
whatever reason she's doing it,
He
and
doesn't
she
have
said she's here for it.
I'm convinced that Kevin Samuel is done with women. I really am. Now, the Kevin Samuels followers and things like that, I feel like maybe they have something different to say, or they don't care about his love life or whatever, even though he's giving love life advice. I don't know. But, you know, it is what it is. I personally feel like he is not an advocate for relationships with women. I think that what we see from his actions, I believe what people show me.
Hmm. Yeah.
I do. So what we've seen and what was further, you know, influenced and emphasized by Adam 22 and his other two co-hosts when they interviewed Kevin Samuels is that he had an escort with him.
Hmm.
Same thing was the, response that DJ Vlad gave. Same thing was the response that what's her name? Tasha K gave. Okay. But they all
Hmm.
had a different escort that they observed within
Yeah.
a short spirit time period. So I only believe what you show me.
Hey, question. Did you get a chance to check out that my latest video I did? Not the one I did today, but I think it was yesterday. I did a video about that petition. Did you get a chance to check that out?
Oh, the
About the
petition
petition about the
Samuel
petition that's out? Yeah.
against him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I checked out your video, but for whatever reason, I can't find the change.org. You talked about the interview on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and played it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that your channel is the one I heard it from. I think I commented on your YouTube or most of the Facebook when we was
It
talking about.
probably was no. You come in on my Facebook. Yeah, you come on my Facebook when I was doing the live. But yeah,
Yeah,
but yeah, 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 well, if you got time, go ahead and check that video out in its entirety and stuff, because I have put in a lot of content regarding that petition and stuff, and also everybody who's on here as well. Go ahead and go onto my page as well. Check out that video. I did a video about that petition, and about Miss whatever her name, Miss Jones, the one who created that petition. She actually did a show yesterday with break down the one woman's perspective and did a full show with them and did a after show after that too about that petition. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, y'all check that out.
That's the one that I listened to. I was listening to it the whole time that you were on. I just, I kind of agree for the most part, because I don't feel like when she's doing this interview that she was really talking to the petition in and of itself. I think that she was talking to basic beliefs and constructs that she has. Now, considering the fact that this particular petition, you said he grew to 1.1 million subs. By the way, I'm just going to let you know he had 1.4 million subs when I checked. That was 2 months ago. So he's actually decreasing in subs. I don't think people have been recognizing that. But that's because his content is now shifted a bit.
I'm bringing this up because I think that it'll be a good healthy debate if we talk about that petition. That we talk about it one day, because her initial argument in a petition was that she said that Kevin Samuel himself promotes domestic violence, and he's causing other men as well to commit these crimes as well, the domestic violence and stuff. And that's the whole point of the petition. But when she did the interview, her interview was contradicting what she was talking about.
I think that's what I'm saying. I thought her interview was more about her personal insights around the content that he has and more answering the questions that they had, more so than actually speaking to her petition. But her petition was based on this particular, that's why I was telling you this is a controversial topic, because it's a woman that called in the Kevin Samuels show, and I was trying to access the video again today, and I think he's taking it down. It was a woman that called into his show, and she was saying that she was in a domestic violence situation, and his specific rhetoric was that he doesn't have any sympathy for women in domestic violence situation because they push Black men to those extremes. Yeah, he said he asked for it. So if a woman is calling your show and you're calling yourself a relationship guru, even if you're self-proclaimed, okay, you have a responsibility, because we know that mental health providers come in all facets. We're coaches, life coaches. So that's why I caution people when they want to call themselves a life coach, because life coaches now come with certification for that reason. Because you guys are out here calling yourself something and dressing yourself up as something that could get you sued, literally. So when I started this video off, I think you were still streaming. So I talked to that at the very beginning, because it's about liability. We have a liability issue. We have to have liability insurance, people. Like, the shit ain't cheap, okay? There is nothing cheap about being in the mental health field. And you cannot go out there and call yourself a relationship coach if you don't have liability insurance. So if you tell a woman you probably deserved it or you deserved it in relation to domestic violence, and you don't know where that person is and you haven't assessed for a current crisis, your ass can go to jail, literally. Let her kill herself. Let her kill herself, and you're the last call that she made. Play with it if you want to. Play with it if you want to. I'm a crisis clinician, okay? So I know the implications. And I think that there are so many people. I think her petition is definitely going to be granted if she goes to the state bar in which he lives. He doesn't live here in Georgia because he can't play those games in Georgia. Georgia is very stringent on the rules. They'll send that cease and desist real quick. All you gotta do is see one show. and he'll be taken off the market. That's what I'm telling you. So you guys have to advocate. I feel like she's advocating maybe in the wrong way. But when you talk about the mental health and emotional and behavioral health system, with the number of suicides and the number of inpatient hospitalizations and observations and suicide attempts that we've had to deal with in the last 2 years alone, the reality facts say he will no longer be on air. I know that you guys like to believe whatever it is that you like to believe. I know you guys like to believe that freedom of speech protects him, blah, blah, blah. Let him continue to put that whole relationship coach in there, and watch how fast y'all are going to watch what the laws do, because there are federal protections against people speaking that rhetoric. That's why there are certain things I can't even speak to on this channel. So you cannot promote violence. Why do you think Umar Johnson is under federal investigation? I don't think anybody ever paid attention or put two and two together. You understand what I'm saying? And I think that Black people are too busy making these conspiracy theories that they refuse to educate themselves as to what the laws and the limits of the laws are, which is how most Black people end up being incarcerated at large numbers, because they swear to God they ain't break no laws. Ignorance of the law does not mean that you're going to get found not guilty. It means your ignorant ass going to go to jail. You know what I mean? I feel like people just have to common sense, right? So I feel like if she removes her petition from change.org and she moves and petitions the state bar for mental health, behavioral health, social workers and stuff like that in the state that he lives in, because I've heard him say several times, like when he was here and I showed you guys that video a couple of weeks ago of him being in a gelato place here in Atlanta. He said he wasn't from Atlanta. He's just visiting. So he doesn't have property here. So he doesn't have residence here. You know what I mean? So you guys have to go to where his primary residence is, petition his state bar, and they will definitely remove him. That I can guarantee you. Because and you guys hear me talk about that all the time, because it's important the way that you market yourself be congruent with your credentials. Like, these are areas that there are no lines of delineation. Why do you think when people say, oh, well, Dr. Jefferson is a PhD, why do you think I can correct them? I'm a medical doctor. A PhD is different. My post-grad degree in marriage and family therapy is secondary to what my doctorate is in. You understand what I'm saying? So it's important as professionals that we get the language right, because the moment we kind of go along with somebody misinterpreting us, it's the moment you put yourself under fire with these boards, and you won't be practicing no damn where. Okay? You think YouTube made you a little money, you're gonna be quickly to go right down the drain, and then when you're in jail, you think your YouTube following is gonna come get your ass out of jail? I don't know. I don't know what he's thinking. But I feel like she went to the wrong source. She has a valid argument if that's what she wants to use. And I feel like that's why he took it down. Because when I went to go look for the video today, it was gone. Same link. So I think he's smarter than most people think. I think that his followers just aren't as bright. Because when you have people advocating for you to stay out there, but you're removing the content, you see what I'm saying? That says that you believe that you're guilty. That's just like when people, who was that? Vlad TV gave me strikes for playing their content on my YouTube. Guess what? I bet you see them damn videos back up. I'm it. Okay, I know every single law, every single copyright, every law in America, I know it. You know why? Because it's my duty to know it, because I'm an American citizen. And I know that ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law. So they weren't willing to go to court, because I'm here for it. So I have 0 copyright strikes, because I don't play about that kind of stuff. So it's really important. I think that content creators have got to get smarter. You understand what I'm saying? Like, if you're going to do a thing, you need to put yourself into a thing. That means you need to know everything that is legally restrictive, everything that regulates that particular area. That's the reason that I started off, and then I wasn't able to finish when I first started this channel. And I feel like when people start to get in the mindset that they know everything and you can't learn anything, that's when you start slipping up and fucking up. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that he realized, I'm sure by now, somebody advising him on the PR side, whether it's the Minister Jap dude or what's that other dude? ASM? AMS, whatever. Alpha male strategist, whoever it is advising him, they advise his ass right. I can guarantee that. I bet that video went away. Like, you know what I mean? If you guys find it, feel free to post it. But I already know it's not there anymore. You see what I'm saying? So I think, like I told you, I think more accountability. But I think Kevin Samuels is also one of those people who realize that black men don't want accountability. They just want somebody to speak against the black women that hurt them. And I get that. But I can guarantee you one thing, before you box me as a goddamn relationship expert or relationship guru, at least I'm gonna have a psychology degree. So, I'm gonna have an undergrad degree or something that says I've studied some type of human being. I mean, it's just basic common sense, people. Like, I don't know. Make it make sense. I understand that, more people are not for, what do you call it? Advanced education or whatever nowadays. Let me see. Reference says, but he doesn't call himself a relationship guru. Actually, he has. And he's called himself specifically the godfather of relationships. And he told them the book a session. Like, he's been marketing on several videos. Why you think? Listen. Look, I'm only here for the facts. You know what I mean? From the beginning, I saw these as red flags, but at that point, I didn't hear him say anything negative towards any federally protected crisis situations in human behavior. So there are some, I think that you guys need to do a little bit more research on what the importance of mental health is to Americans right now. Because in the 90s, shit took a big turn. So I'm gonna need you guys to get yourselves brushed up, because this is something that the feds do not take lightly, because the deaths are ridiculous. People kill themselves for reasons and attempt suicides for reasons that we never thought would be an issue, because people have inadequate coping mechanisms, and it's an abundance of those people. So when I talk about addressing these issues in our community, it's because I see what the issues are on a larger scale, but also because I see that these are issues that could also legally start affecting the Black and the brown community, contributing to the prison presence of Black and brown people. So let me look up one of Kevin Samuels' latest videos over there, and pull up his description area. Talking to you,
about,
urban therapy.
Talking about me?
Yeah.
Pull up what video? Which one? Because you got a lot of them.
Yeah, one of the most recent ones. So like maybe from 5 days ago, 2 days ago, whatever.
Let's see. Hey, you want me to share it on the screen?
Yeah.
Hold up, because I got to do some extra stuff to make it work.
Because I think I display his old, because we did that on the last couple of videos that I did in side by side comparison. So it won't be on one of the ones from Instagram, I don't think. I don't know. But I know it's on the ones that he uploads and has live on YouTube, because the Instagrams are uploaded after the fact. I'm trying to think of the specific video that I heard him refer to himself as the godfather of relationships. think that was like 3 months ago.
Which one you want to see? Because I say you got a lot of them.
Just pull up the description component. Oh yeah, that winter's coming stuff. He doesn't even know what that means. That is just so crazy to me. Like, how can you use a centralized theme that has been mistaken and they don't even know what it means in the fucking video? That's the crazy thing. Like, non-European descent people kill me trying to draw comparisons. I just don't understand this guy. I'm gonna, I just let it slide. By the way, when people from when people from European countries reference winter is coming, what that means is you have to make sure that you hunt and you gather enough food rations, etc., to protect you and your family through the harsh cold. That's what that means. Yeah, that's the one that I watched on here. Oh, other people are talking about it. I don't want to talk about the petition in particular. Because winters are literally harsh there. The amount of foolery. Yeah, the Game of Thrones is based off of stories of Vikings that have long vacated, and actually that was before the separatism of the Atlantic Ocean being the Great Divide. So that's actually this land right here, more like North Carolina area and all the way up to Rhode Island area and stuff like that. That's actually the parts of the world that were still connected back then. But it's neither here nor there. And I'm not here to teach you guys history and evolution and all that good stuff. Let me see. So click one and then pull up his, let's see, a month ago. Let's go to that 1 month ago. What is that? Is that Blue Jasmine?
Well, tell my ex still pay my bills.
Yeah.
Okay.
Click on that one and then click on that one.
Oh, the audio probably not gonna play. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
I'm
it's
gonna mute
not.
the audio.
Do you hear the audio?
I just want you to look at the description. Go down to the description at the description area. How do you view the description? Isn't it supposed to be like a thing here with information about the channel?
Yeah, normally it'll have like a drop down if he have a description for it.
Okay, so let's go back to another one. See if we can find one with the description. Because he used to say he was just an image consultant where fashion meets fragrance or something, like fragrance meets fashion, or yeah, but then he changed it. So exactly. Let's go to that Winters is coming. I think Winter is coming. I think that's the one that Kel was. Hey Monterio, what's going on?
Yeah, that's the only description you got down there saying degree walkers.
Uh-huh. See, I told y'all the guy is smarter than his followers. Y'all listen, like I can't make this stuff up. So somebody obviously in seeing these petitions, right? That's what I'm telling people. Like folks don't understand. Yeah, so you see, he now has no description. Now we go all the way back to that one that I showed you guys of him and what's that guy named AS AMS is African shit. I don't know. Alpha male strategist. Go to that video. Can you type that in? Can you go to that video that he had? Let me see if I can go to it. Because I don't know if you checked that out. The one that when he first started up and coming before he deemed himself to be a relationship guru, when he was learning from alpha male strategists.
Oh, I'm not proud of saw it, but
hold on, let me pull it up real quick. I'm going to show you guys how he changed. But obviously now he's no longer putting his descriptions. Why? No, he says it's on the fire. Somebody told him the same basic information that I told. Like, you guys, you got to know what the laws are. And you're not exactly. You got to know what the laws are. The less you know, the more, the more possible that you're going to be in trouble and under fire for something that you don't even want to take responsibility for. Yep. I'm looking for it in my history. I just saw it the other day. He's so funny looking.
Yep. Well, I'm fixing to go jump on off too. Shoot, it's like 12:30 here my time. So I get ready for another day in a couple of hours.
Yeah, but you guys go and look at the one where I found it. Oh crap, where did you go? Look, I'm using my trackpad, so it's harder for me to click and select. Yeah, it ain't gonna work. Look, me using this, but I did find it. So look at the one. It has the alpha male strategist. His picture is on one side, and Kevin Samuel's picture is on the other side. Then you'll know you're looking at the right video. Look at the description that he gives himself in that video versus where he is now and how he refers to himself now.
Yep. Yeah, I'll check it out later on. See what it's about.
So that is all that I have, you guys. Thank the official urban therapist for coming in and sharing his insights and perspectives and all that good stuff. And then also thanks to you guys in the chat for keeping it live and entertaining and all that great stuff. And some of the weirdos that came on in the back that weren't real people, because I just can't be convinced that they weren't bots asking to be let in. Just weird stuff. So it's been great, you guys. Hopefully you go out there and you do more research and you educate yourself on your history and where you came from. And as a result, take a greater level of accountability and responsibility to your community. Make good choices, do good deeds, and be careful out here in these streets because it is dangerous. Later days. Bye.
Who alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I rip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bonnet. Don't try studying me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.